evening, everyone, and welcome to our CEC meeting for October. We welcome you all. Am I on? Are we on? Everyone is on? Okay. So I welcome everyone. We still have the opportunity to conduct our business in a hybrid setting, even with our CEC members. So we're going to start with the roll call, and then we're going to jump right into our meeting. Carly, can you do the roll call, please?
Joseph Di Benedetto.
Present.
Wing Yu. Present. Anne-Marie Knable.
She's here on office.
She's there. I saw her. I'll come back to her. Joseph Chow.
Present.
Sung Young Lee. Present. Roshni Krishnan is absent. Michelle Frederick. I also saw her on here. Michelle.
Present.
Anne-Marie.
Present. I'm sorry, I couldn't unmute.
Okay. And Sana Tayas. Present. Okay.
Okay, so that's wonderful. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 members present. We definitely have quorum. Thank you, council members, for joining us this evening, which means we have some business to do and vote on a couple of things, but I'm going to ask for consensus on approving the minutes from our last meeting. You should all have the minutes in front of you or on the screen. Carly, can you put it on the screen?
Sorry.
You putting it up?
It's up, but it's giving me a hard time. Like, put in preview file. There's a problem loading more pages.
So the council members were given the minutes in an email, and we should have it in our folders. So
I don't know why it's still yes.
they're page 2, Carly.
They're not loading.
There should be a second page starting with evaluation and IEP meeting.
It's not loading. I don't know what.
Call it refresh your browser page.
Refresh it.
Thank you, Louis. How are you?
I'm good, Joe. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Ryan Lewis.
Still telling me the same thing. I don't know. Yeah.
What about?
No,
the
it's opening
email?
for me.
What'd you say, Louis?
I see all the pages on my computer.
It's not loading on mine.
You can also download it. Push the
Members,
download button.
So I'm going to move on because the council members have it in their folder and the members that are here remotely should have it in their emails. So do we have consensus on the approval of the minutes? The public is not able to see page 2, which basically spoke about the evaluation process and the IEP meeting. So if we have consensus on the approval of the minutes, we can approve them at this point. We have consensus on it?
Yes.
Approved? Okay, so the minutes are hereby approved. So welcome everyone. We have a highly anticipated meeting. We have Matt Robini here to discuss about high school admissions. We have our superintendent's report, which Superintendent DeMango will talk about the middle school admission process, correct? Am I mistaken? Or especially,
Yes, I'm gonna mention the middle.
Okay. And then we have Dr. Michael D'Antonio who will give us the state of the district. Before we get into our meeting, I want to introduce, we always welcome our elected officials, and we have the presence of Councilmember Sandra Ung being here at our meeting in person. So I'd like to, with all due respect, give her the opportunity to speak to the public, and welcome, Councilmember.
Thank you. I'm City Council Member Sandra of District 20, District 25 for the schools. I'm very happy to be here today. If you guys don't know me, I'm actually a product of New York City schools. I went to PS 22, Junior High School 189, and Flushing High School. I actually just want to give a big thank you to Superintendent DeMango for helping us so much with everything going on, and also co-sponsoring our movies Under the Stars. We're actually having another movie night, Adam's Family, coming on the 28th on flyers over there. I know we are here tonight for a very important presentation about the admissions process. I had last year, when the last year's admissions process came out, I was very deeply concerned with that lottery process, and I made it very clear to the Chancellor that we had to fix it with this year. I know as soon as this year, the press release came out, I know that my office was in contact with President Benedetto about it, and I know there's still many concerns about it too. So I'm really looking forward to hear about the process going on tonight. I'll be here to listen to that, and I look forward to working with all the parents and students and teachers to make sure this process is as fair as possible for all our children. Thank you.
Councilmember, I don't know if there are any elected officials on here remotely. Carly, you'll let me know, because I don't want to be disrespectful to them, and if they'd like to introduce themselves, if they're here, I'll give them the opportunity to do so. So there's a lot going on in the city with the DOE, and I'm glad that we have a quorum of members here this evening, because we have a lot to do. So before we get into our presentation, I just want the council members to understand we need to revise our bylaws. We spoke about it last month, because we do not allow virtual video conferencing. So we can talk about that when the presentation is over. We have a couple of resolutions on the table. We need to also discuss and vote on our budget. There's some discussion that we need to have regarding changes or potential changes to fair student funding. So there's a lot we need to talk about, but I'll take that up after the presentations. Let's start with our superintendent's report, and then we'll move on to our high school admissions process. Matthew, I know you're here, and I welcome you. A few more minutes, okay?
Great, thank you for having me.
Hi, Matt, good to see you. So we'll wait, Dr. D'Antonio will do his presentation after Matt?
Yes.
Yes, perfect, yeah. So good evening, everyone, I'm happy to be here. And I just would also like to echo President DiBenedetto in saying hello to Councilwoman Ung. It's always a pleasure, and there's just been so many wonderful things that we have done together this year, and I'm really excited to continue working together, and thank you so much for being here. Okay, who's running my report, Louis or Carly? Louis? Okay, Louis. So a lot of great things to talk about. As Mr. DiBenedetto said, Matt Borgini will talk about high school applications, but I just wanted to let the community know you can join a virtual event on high school admissions that is happening. Visit www.schools.nyc.gov. And this is for students entering 9th grade in fall 2023. It's time to get ready for high school's admissions. And it will talk about here's what to do when welcome letters So here's what to do. Welcome letters are now available in my school or from your child's current NYC public schools. You can also register for the specialized high school admissions test, otherwise known as the SHIZAT, at www.schools.nyc.gov/SHS. And you submit your high school applications when the application opens on October 12th. You can list up to 12 program choices in order of preference, and the deadline to apply is December 1st. So middle school applications will open on October 26th, and the deadline to apply is December 1st. Students will receive offers in April. And families will receive a welcome letter from their schools with directions to set up My Schools and the website in order to get more information is listed here at www.schools.nyc.gov/enrollment/enroll grade by grade /middle school. This information will also be on our district website. And it will also include open houses for our families to have access to some of our middle schools that will be hosting open houses where parents and students who are interested can visit and hear of the many wonderful things that happen across all of our middle schools. One of the things that I think is important and I'm very proud of in our community is that we are a district of middle school choice, and that means regardless of where you live in District 25, you can apply to any of our zoned middle schools as well as our application schools. And our application schools are our 6 to 12 programs that we have, as well as Bell Academy and Middle School 379. So, and our K to 8 schools as well. So I'm really excited about that. Also to let our community know that although we are middle school choice, we also do still maintain our zones where if students attend, where students' zones are, those students have priority to admissions in our middle schools across the district. But we have many different opportunities for our students to explore different schools outside their zones as well. And we're really excited this month to be able to share those with you. So please check our website and we will have those open house dates available. Okay, middle school screen programs. And I know recently you have heard that there will be opportunities for individual districts and superintendents to make decisions about having middle school screen programs. Carly, can you just do me a favor and lift the corner of the screen so no, that's all right. So in alignment to my core values of empowerment and engagement that you heard many of me discuss, you've heard me discuss through my 90-day plan, I believe in providing schools with decision-making opportunities and open lines of communication. I've asked all middle and K to 8 schools this month to engage their constituencies in options to open middle screen programs beginning next year. So all of our middle school SLTs were consulted and asked to reach out to the community members they represent. The following schools in District 25 have asked to be considered for screened middle school programs. That's PSMS 164, IS 25, and Junior High School 189. So just so all of you know that our screened middle school programs will be district placed, and students' 4th grade grades will be used for that placement. So if students qualify, parents will receive notification from Central. If they are interested, they can apply to any of the screen programs that will be selected. So right now, I will be submitting these 3 schools for consideration. And there are many things that they look at, and one of them is space in schools, but most of them look okay. So please note that all of our middle schools that had SP programs in the past are able to maintain them. So these screen programs will be in addition to some of the accelerated offerings that we've had. And we will also continue to offer our Regents Readiness curriculum to any student that chooses to have the opportunity to take the multiple Regents courses that we offer in 8th grade across the district. So I would like to thank Marissa Martin. Each month she does something very exciting and interesting about District 25. So this month it's about what's brewing. You can always visit www.d25.nyc/social to keep up with all the great things that are happening across District 25. And here's some examples of the things that we are doing. As I had said last month, that we are really excited to welcome over 20 new team members to District 25 that are offering supports to our schools. So if you check out our websites, you will see we are celebrating each and every new team member and the work that they are contributing to our offices. Here's some information about open houses. And you can visit schools.nyc/gov/enrollment for more information. We want to celebrate PS 165s on Fridays. I see that Miss Neely is on tonight. So on Fridays, and they end the week with good old-fashioned fun and games to build social skills and joys in our classrooms. And one of the things that I love is that every member of the school's community participates, from school aides to lunch staff to custodians. And if you're ever there, you get to see Miss Neely dance, because I know she does that too very well. This past week, we had our first in-person meeting with District 25 assistant principals. We were really excited to get back together to see each other and to learn from one another. And I'd like to celebrate PS 193. They did their annual Walk for a Cure cancer charity. And each class was so creative in choosing and representing the themes this year, and it was a beautiful day. Bell Academy, congratulations to the winners of our anti-bullying poster and essay contest. What a better way to welcome Bullying Prevention Month than by having our students promote messages of tolerance and friendship. So at Bell Academy and at every school in District 25, bullying will not be tolerated. Congratulations to our Bell Academy student and Principal Abbott. Okay, and that's it for my report.
Thank you, Superintendent. So before we move on to the high school admissions process, I'll entertain any questions we have or the public may have towards the superintendent regarding middle school applications or middle school screen programs. Mr. Showers will begin.
I want to ask my question very carefully. Now, I'm glad you have 3 additional schools that may be screened. That's beautiful. When they look at the 4th grade assessment, will they look at the 3rd grade state exam scores?
It's only the 4th grade grades, not assessment, 4th grade grades.
Okay, from my experience, state exams are standardized tests that tells you how, for lack of a better word, smart you are. Class grades indicates how hard you work. So if they can look at the state exam, I don't touch you'll be better. You have a better problem. The other question is, you mentioned that the schools that have the SP program will keep it. Does that include 185? Are they?
185 does not have an SP program.
Will they consider having it?
That's not something that they're doing right now in their school.
Okay, very good.
I know that that was brought up too.
Yeah, so 185, their SLT has engaged in a discussion around an SP program. They currently do individualized school programming, very similar to high schools. And what they do is a strategic assessment of students' strengths and areas of weakness within 6th grade. And they engage in interviews with both students and parents where they talk to them about the work that would need to be done in order to be successful in the Regents exams. They offer 4 Regents exams, and I will say congratulations to 185 and 194. They had the highest pass rate in the district. And they offered many more students the opportunity to have access to the Regents.
So I understand that the middle school screen programs was a choice that was given to the SLTs. So have all the school SLTs had the opportunity to make that decision as of today?
All of our middle school and K-8 schools, yes.
And the requirement or the by looking at the 4th grade scores, it's not your decision or the SLT's decision, correct? It's something that's coming from central. So if somebody had a problem, if we as council, the community has a problem with that, is it something that it would probably be by resolution if we wanted to change that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I just.
And thank you, Joe. And I also think it's important to contact each of your schools' SLTs, or you can call the middle school's parent coordinators, because their SP selection process is different than the screen program. That is a citywide program that's going to happen across New York City for screening, where they will use 4th grade grades.
Okay, I'm sorry, all these questions, I'll go to the other. Were all the middle schools given the option of mandating SLT screen school programs?
Yeah, so I had a meeting with principals 2 weeks ago, and one of the things that I asked was that they engage with their SLTs, explain the opportunity in the process, and then to reach out to their constituencies and to come to consensus as to whether or not a school would want to adopt a screening program in their school. We then surveyed all of the schools to get feedback, and the 3 schools that asked consideration were 189, PSMS 164, and IS 25.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the council members? Comments? For those members that are here virtually? Are there any questions? Are you okay if I take any questions from the audience, or is there anybody here that has any questions before we move on to the high school admissions process, or anything in the chat regarding any questions? Okay, so if that's the case, thank you, Superintendent. We will now move on to our next item, which is the high school admission process. Mr. Rugini, are you ready?
Yes. Hi, Joe. Hi, District 25. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay. Thank you for having me. It's always good to be here in District 25. I am trying to share my screen. I just had a couple slides. It says who can share, only host, all participants.
I made you co-host. There he is. You should be able to share your co-host.
And let me try again. Oh, there we go. All right, Joe, are these slides, this slide showing?
They are showing, yes, thank you.
Cool. So thanks again for having me. Again, my name is Matt Bergini. I'm the Executive Director of Middle School and High School Admissions. Again, very glad to be here in District 25. I know we've had a great partnership with Superintendent Domingo's office and all the middle schools, the elementary schools in the district in terms of supporting District 25 families through the admissions processes. So I think today, I wanted to kind of touch on some updates to the process, which I know are kind of top of mind for everybody. I think everyone here tonight is aware that we've been having a citywide conversation about admissions for quite some time, including over the past couple of years. This last year's process was a process that we got a lot of feedback on, particularly around the high school screening component. Last year was a process that was largely governed by the pandemic, and that students who were participating didn't have grades, test scores that were analogous to what existed before the pandemic. Now that we're thankfully finally in a better place, we're able to kind of look more closely at that process, and we're glad that we have some updates. I will mention too that our office did really robust engagement this spring. We invited any principal, all 1,800 throughout the city, to join us for conversations to share feedback, along with parent coordinators, parents, CEC presidents, and other stakeholders. We listened, and we're really excited that we have some updates to the process. So right here are kind of sort of the top level changes to the process this year, and just to talk through them. We're really excited that we have earlier application timelines and offers will be out earlier. In our engagement, this is one of the things we heard most prominently, that offers came out too late the last 2 years. So we're really excited that we're reverting back to a pre-pandemic timeline where families will have their high school offer in March and their middle school offer in April, as the superintendent was just mentioning. We heard from a lot of families that navigating open houses and tours was an arduous process. So this year we created a centralized open house calendar in My Schools that any family can access. And we are actively currently in the process of inviting principals to submit that information so that families have kind of a one-stop shop to learn about open houses. We heard that folks want clearer admissions information. So in My Schools now, we have some more accurate information about who gets offers to different high schools, different middle schools each year. We have a more accurate number to describe the applicants to each school. So we're really excited about that update. Last year, we launched a virtual admissions process, a virtual audition process in My Schools, where for our performing arts schools, students could upload videos of themselves performing virtually. We improved that process so it's cleaner operationally. It's a more family-friendly experience. Families can see when they submitted. So we're excited about that. Over the last couple years, we implemented the Shazat during the day in middle schools. That was a pandemic-related measure. However, we heard very positive feedback to that. So we are now moving forward post-pandemic with the Shazat being given in middle schools across the city. So students can go directly to their middle school. The testing date this year will be November 17th and take the test in their own school. And additionally, we heard a lot of feedback on the screening process last year at the high school level, specifically that the top performing group was too inclusive. Too many students were falling into that group, resulting in what came to be known as the lottery. And we have modified that to make that screening process more rigorous. So just to talk through the process, welcome letters are available for students going through the high school process, as the superintendent just mentioned. The Shazat registration did open last week, and that will remain open through November 4th. So again, any family interested in the Shazat can go into their My Schools account and register for that exam. That's not a time-sensitive thing. It just has to be done between now and November 4th. Today was a busy day in our office. The high school application opened this afternoon. We're very excited about that. Concurrently, the LaGuardia application opened as well. And 2 weeks from today, on October 26th, the middle school application will open. As I mentioned, most students will take the Shazat in their middle school on November 17th. And December 1st is the application deadline for both middle school and high school admissions, as well as for the LaGuardia application. For some schools that require students to submit some additional materials, such as Bard Queens or performing arts schools, the deadline to submit those materials is going to be on December 9th. In March, as I just mentioned, both Shazat results and high school offer letters will be available to families. And in April, middle school offer letters will be available to families. I wanted to touch really quickly on the screening for the high school process, which I know was a piece of last year's process that we got a lot of feedback on. Applicants to our screened high school programs will be in groups based on the average of their final 7th grade core course grades. And students will be admitted to screen programs in group order, starting with students in group 1. So at a screen program that has a lot of applicants, students who fall into that top performing group, group 1, will be considered first until all seats are filled or until all applicants have been considered. If there is a program where there are more applicants in group 1 than available seats, students from group 1, from that top performing group, will be randomly selected for seats. At a screen program that's able to accommodate all applicants in group 1, At that point, students in group 2, the next highest performing group, will be considered for available seats. If there are more applicants in group 2 who are applying to that high school than remaining seats, students from group 2 will be randomly selected for remaining seats until all seats are filled, or all students in group 2 can be accommodated. And that process will continue through group 3, group 4, and ultimately through group 5. This text might be a little small on the screen you're all looking at, but just to talk through it, students will now fall into the top performing group, group 1, if their final 7th grade course grade average puts them in the top 15% citywide or in the top 15% of their middle school. So that 15% is sort of the magic number. If your final 7th grade ELA, math, science, and social studies course grades averaged fall in the top 15% citywide or in the top 15% of your middle school, then you are in group 1. The caveat being assuming that average is at least a 90. If you're not in group 1, but your core course grades put you in the top 30% citywide or the top 30% at your middle school, you will fall in group 2. Again, assuming that average is at least an 80. Group 3 is in the top 50% citywide or the top 50% of your middle school with an average of at least at 70. And students in group 4 are in the top 70% citywide or in the top 70% of their middle school, assuming their average is at least 65. And all remaining students would fall into group 5. We knew there are some questions about this process. The high school application did just open about 5 hours ago. We're very excited about it. Families now can go into their My Schools account and they can see which group they fall into in their profile. So if you go into My Schools and you click, there's a little link that says profile, you can see biographical information about your child or about yourself if you're doing the application yourself as an 8th grader. There's a category that says screened admissions group, and it will indicate, it will say group 1, group 2, group 3, or so on, depending on your final 7th grade grades. So Joe, that was my kind of touching on the key parts of this process and the improvements. And I think you were hoping to do some Q&A if that would make sense to you next, unless you have any kind of initial questions.
I know that, I've known about the changes and I've already engaged with some questions and comments that I've gotten feedback from the community, but I want to give the other members also an opportunity to speak. But the first question I have for you is, so it's still keeping the lottery system, right? You're not, for the screens process, it's not merit-based, it's just narrowing the numbers. Before, I think it was 85 and above, between 85 and 100. Now it's between 90 and 100, is that correct?
No, so the top performing group are students who are in the top 15% of their middle school and the top 15% citywide. So that top performing group, group 1, is a fairly, I'll use the word elite group. It's a very small group of kids who are being considered first. That 90, it just means they have to have at least a 90 average to be in that group, but they also need to be in the top 15% citywide or the top 15% of their middle school. To contrast, go ahead.
So it's not based, it's based only on the 7th grade average. It's not based on test scores.
It is based on the 7th grade.
Core subjects, correct?
Correct.
So I just think that, I know you narrowed the pool, but it's still putting a lot of students into a lottery. And, the students that really work and have the 97, the 98, 99 average that we're getting into these screen programs are now pooled with other students that are not as high on their achievement scores. So I think you're still going to have a problem with the admissions, because a lot of families are still, they don't seem to realize that it's not based on merit. It's if you fall within the top 15%, then you're going to be put in a lottery with a lot of other kids. And someone with a 90 average that might be in the top 15% may get into a school as opposed to someone who has a 99 average. And I think that's what happened last year with parents, were overwhelmed when they realized that their child did not make any of their schools.
So I will just quickly contrast this with last year's process. Last year's process put anyone with an average of 85 to 100 in that top bucket. At the end of the day, 62% of our high school applicants fell into that top bucket. I will also caveat that the data we were using was very tricky because of the pandemic. But we went from 62% now to the top 15% citywide or the top 15% in school. So the academic profile and the portion of students in that top group is reduced very, very significantly from last year. You are correct, there is still a random selection process within that group. But I think we would argue that that is a merit-based process and that the 85% of students who aren't in the top of their middle school or aren't in the top citywide, they are going to be admitted after that 15%.
Good evening. I'm going to ask you an easier question and a harder one. Are we keeping the high school zones or no?
Yes.
Okay, that's great to hear. Now, my next question is following along the president's question. The top 1% and the top 15% are two different kinds of students. Many of the local schools, I was the math AP at one of the local schools. Some of our students gave up Stuyvesant Bronx Science to come to us. Now, they end up becoming doctors, engineers, professors, and teachers. I was in charge of hiring teachers. I tried to hire those teachers. I wouldn't want to hire the 15% or 14% kids who want to be teachers because the top students are probably going to be much stronger academically. I don't think it's fair. It's actually like Joe said, President said, it's really very discouraging for the top students. In addition, no offense to anyone, some middle school grades are how much the teacher likes you, okay? You're counting only 4 subjects. I could get a 65 in Spanish, which is a major subject, and still be ranked in the 15%. In addition, further, you don't even count the state exams. I stated before, the state exam tells the school administrators how intelligent the child is, whereas your class grade, it usually indicates how hard you work or how much you met the requirement. I don't think, personally, I don't think, and I'm speaking on behalf of many parents, we don't think it's a fair approach. There's only a few good high schools left in Queens, couple in Brooklyn. By doing this, you're going to ruin all of them. Thank you.
So appreciate your feedback on that. And, you know,
Sure.
Obviously it's an engagement. We heard a wide range of perspectives, and that was a perspective that surfaced. So thank you for sharing that. In terms of the grading, please, I do just want to reiterate that it's the core course grades that are being used. So it's math, English, science, and social studies. And the DOE does have sort of academic standards for what warrants grades. So there is some consistency across grades citywide.
Is there any reason why they're not considering the state exams anymore?
That was a decision made by DOE leadership. You know, I think there's a sense that grades represent the whole student a little bit more. You know, test scores this year, also the opt-out rate was higher. You know, we saw that, you know, when they were publicly released a couple of weeks ago, there were some sort of oddities to sort of what was in those state tests. I think for this process, we are using grades. We can keep, I think, having a discussion about what could be used in the future.
Yeah, because there's going to be a group that's going to argue that the state exam is more objective than the subjectiveness of the 7th grade teacher, right? Because, you know, it really, you know, how do we know if a student is just on the cusp and the teacher pushes that student into the 90th percentile of the top 15% to give that student the opportunity, which is great for that student, but, you know, you're excluding a really elite group of students who, you know, 99, 98, 97, these are the students that in the past have been making these screened schools, we're not talking about somewhere in the 90s, we're talking about 99, 100. It's very competitive. And we have, a high school now district that's going to be severely affected, if it's not already affected, that's Townsend Harris, right? So that's going to be a problem. This is what I anticipate we're going to have a problem again next year. But I know that wasn't your decision, it's the DOE's decision, but something that the community needs to discuss and we need to have conversations on it. Is there any other council member that would like to make a comment? And then I'll go to the public.
And thanks, Joe, and I can pass that feedback along.
I appreciate that. Is there any council member that's here remotely before I go to the public with any questions? Matt, I hope you don't mind, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Carly, I can't see the screen. Anybody that?
No. Someone in the
Public, okay, so if somebody here is gonna have a question, and then you'll introduce yourself to Mr. Virginie, and then we'll move on. I'll allow you 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. Good evening, sir. My question, combined comment is, as attending school meetings across the city, there seems to be the same request. And I know that the answer is the city is committed to equity. So they are not going to put back the system the way that it used to be. Parents are requesting a certain percentage to be guaranteed for merit-based. I want most parents on this Zoom and in person and all over to really understand that they're not gonna put back the same level of merit-based. So you have to compromise with the city in order to accommodate a small portion of your family. They're not gonna put back totally merit-based, but you can request 5% or 10% to be guaranteed seats in their first choice school. And then you have to compromise and allow for that 85 average to 100 average for some other seats. They're not going to give you all of your seats for your highest performing students who are great test takers. This is a new day in New York City, and that's no longer going to be. So parents are upset, but what do they do about it? Nothing. They just complain to you, but it's not changing the policy because you're not showing that you're willing to give anything. Right? They are trying to give access to students who never would have received access. If you're saying you want only merit-based, good luck to you. You're never going to have it in this current city. So why not ask for a compromise? Can we be guaranteed that the top 5% at least will get their first or second choice school? Because what parents are going to do is they're not going to put their local school that's great, and then they're not going to get into their local school. They're going to go to the Bronx because they didn't even put their local school that's very good that they would take instead of Townsend Harris. And you have to put it at number 1 to guarantee that you get that school. So parents and community members have to understand the algorithm and ask for something that's inclusive and equitable and giving other people an opportunity. Because you keep saying you want all merit-based, you're just going to hear yourself talk and they're never going to give you anything. So really look at the numbers, look at the algorithm, look at the formulation and put in a request that's clear and concise, that it's not going to meet every parent's need, but at least the top 100 to 98 average will get a guarantee in the seats that they want. But parents and community have to understand the algorithm is not in the favor of merit-based, but most of the students in the city are not at that level.
Thank you, Venus. So I guess we understand that because that's what's been happening from last year. And I know we did some progress because we narrowed the percentages, right? But like you say, maybe we should ask for a compromise because we know that the DOE is probably not going to do 100% merit-based. So that could be a good option, something the community and we need to discuss, whether we should narrow the percentages, right? So maybe we should do the top 5% or whatnot. That's something that we should consider. But we really need to have these conversations. We had a CEC meeting about high school admissions, I believe it was last February, if I'm not mistaken. And the presentation was there. I knew it was coming, but we didn't really get much feedback from the community until after the results came out and the parents were shocked. So we knew it was coming. Venus, you're right, we need to be realistic about this and, approach this, but we need the community to get involved and let us know so we can act as well.
I just remembered something else. The reason why you should use the state exams is that you level the playground because it's a standardized test. I can assure you the top 50% in District 25. I'll say the 14 or 15% kid in District 25 is far better than the 5% or 6% of kid in another district. If you look at the standardized exam, then I'll give you, that's kind of levels the ground. The state exam, not just 1, 2, 3, 4, gives you a specific score. And if you take that into consideration, I think everybody will be happy or happier.
Another thing to consider, is there anyone else present here this evening that would like to make a question or a comment? Okay, now we'll go to the public that's here virtually.
TK.
TK, if you could unmute yourself, I'll give you 2 minutes.
I'm asking to unmute.
Is TK here? Is there another comment or question from somebody else?
Oh, that's Tommy.
Oh, Mr. Coe.
Tommy, unmute yourself.
Hi.
Good evening.
You guys hear me?
Yes, you're on.
Yeah, I guess the question I have is what about for I'm actually on the SLT for the Townsend Harris High School, and how come we're not allowed? What is the process to put additional screen on? How is that 25 schools were allowed to put in, but Townsend Harris we asked to put additional screen on, and we were not given any information on how to put it on, and we didn't get any feedback on putting additional screen. Number one. And the second question I have is on essentially on the state on the grades. How are you normalizing grades from different schools, and how are you going to stop and take into account the effect of grade inflation? Because every difference, I mean, a 95 from one school is not the same as 95 from different schools in middle school. And how do you know what the breakdown, and then obviously there's been cases of grade inflation by different schools that had for different students. And how are you normalizing it if you're not taking into account the state exams? Thank you.
Yep.
I'm going to ask Mr. Virginia if he can answer that.
Yeah, so I also just want to quickly affirm the preceding two speakers' comments on merit and thank them for their feedback, which I can also pass along. Regarding the Townsend Harris assessment, the school reached out to us last week and we are in discussion with the superintendent about that. So we are looking at that actively, is the answer to that. And then in terms of the grading piece, grades across middle schools are, when you look at the data, actually fairly consistent. There are standards for what warrants different grades, and that is administered by Central DOE, the Office of Academic Policy. So there is some consistency to that. Additionally, we are doing the top 15% at respective middle schools, so that students in a respective middle school are competing against other students at that middle school.
Mr. Coe, do you understand the answer? Is he still here? So I think that, a lot of, what Mr. Coe is asking is are you here, Mr. Coe? It's something that I've been dealing with from members of the community since after the high school admissions came out. So he cannot unmute himself. Can you try it?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I guess I'm still not understanding it. Why? I mean, I still don't understand how you're normalizing the scores. I guess is my question for a lot of students. And I guess also, what if you don't take into account the state exam, right? why is the incentive for middle school next year to take the exam? Why won't the 50% opt out next year? Why should I put my kids through four days of stress, for 2 days for ELA and 2 days when it doesn't count for anything, right? If that happens, right, you're saying like, oh, maybe 5% is high, right? What if 50% decide not to take it because it doesn't count for anything? What happens then? You're going to get cut in state, right? The state is going to be saying if you have less than 90% participation rate, they're going to cut your budgeting for the schools. And then you're not going to get a proper assessment to see how students are doing because a lot of people are opting out, right? So I don't understand this logic of not taking account. I'm not saying it should be all test-based, but it's got to be taken into account somehow, right? Because this is the only way that's normalized, and you take into account the adjustment for people who need additional time, it's untimed and all those things. There's all the adjustment and made for that. So this is the whole point of that setup, right? It's been tested for many decades on this. So I don't understand it. So I think you're setting yourself up for people opting out a lot more next year going forward.
So that might exactly be what's going to happen. I mean, from my understanding, these state exams are for assessment purposes, correct? I mean, if now we realize that it's not going to have any effect on the high school admissions, then you're probably going to get a lot more students that are going to opt out of the test. Because I agree with you, Mr. Cole. I mean, why would I want to put my child through that stress if my child's not going to receive any benefit of taking the test, right? It's not going to show any measure of his or her, qualifications to make it into a screen high school. So that's a problem that I think the city needs to address, as superintendent.
Yes, so I want to talk about that just in terms of how we use our assessments to support our learners. The intentions of taking state tests was never to be used in the way that it's being used, and which is why the state law says we have to look at multiple measures of a child. You can't use test scores solely for anything. So you'll hear Dr. Mike talk today about how we use assessments to really look very carefully by school and to work with our schools in knowing our students well, and to setting goals and making adjustments to curriculum and our support program to help our students to continue growth aligned to the standards. So I think, and I do understand and respect what the community is saying, but I hope we wouldn't equate opting out to not using state test scores for high school admissions. They really are to provide us with information about student progress, student acceleration, and how we can support that school by school as a district.
I mean, it's true, that's why we have the state exams, but the fact of the matter is a lot of parents and students use the state exams as in the past as a form of making it into a high school. So we have to change the way we think and our approach to the high school admissions, because the fact of the matter is the state exam is not going to have any effect on it the way it is. The other thing, Mr. Bergin, I'm not sure, I didn't really understand the answer, because Mr. Coe was questioning how do you account for the differences of the schools and the grading process. I mean, a seventh grade teacher from one school may grade very differently from a seventh grade teacher in the other school. So how is the DOE accounting for that with the admissions process to high school? I really don't understand your answer to that.
So I think when you look at the data, there is a good amount of standardization across the board in terms of what grades look like. And there are, benchmarks. I don't know if Superintendent Domingo has any more specifics, but there is sort of guidance on how grades are to be given and standards that are to be met. And those are used in the grading process.
Yeah, I can speak specifically to District 25 and the work that we've done around this. But I do know that each of our districts, and prior to us being districts, our boroughs, they do have and APA, who really supports schools with academic policy. And the role of the APA is to meet with schools, and part of the work is to discuss grading policies. Now, I know that there is room for discussion around different schools and grading policies, but we have been very clear in District 25 that all grades should be aligned to standards. It's one of the reasons why attendance cannot be used in terms of grading, because it is aligned to students' growth within the standards. So one of the things that we've done specifically with our middle schools in District 25, and like I said, I can only speak for the work that we've done in our districts, is that our middle school principals have shared their grading policy. This has come up from parents on more than one occasion, and we do have standardized consideration across all of our middle schools in regards to ensuring in all subjects, not just our core subjects, that students are being aligned to standards at each, the students' grades are aligned to standards at each grade level. So I will say to all of our families that have that question that you can, if you have not already received your school's grading policy or the grading policies from other schools, as Matt is saying, he gets the citywide perspective, and there is standardization from what he's seeing. We also see that in District 25, that there is standardization of expectations. When Dr. D'Antona and I go to visit schools, it's one of the things that we do review with our principals to ensure that there has been that conversation of standardization, that our teachers are channeling their work and engaging in tasks and lessons that are aligned to the standards that can be clearly articulated, and that students' expectations of their work product are graded using rubrics and other measures that are standards aligned.
Thank you, Superintendent. Are there any other questions in the chat for Mr. Bergini? Okay. So any comments from our councilmen? So I'm curious, I mean, I don't want to keep Mr. Bergini here, but you know, I'd like to talk about it with the council members, what your opinion is. I know there's a resolution on the table. We haven't even discussed it, but I'm curious on your opinion.
So my child is not in middle school yet, so I'm somewhat unclear on what's going on in middle school. But in my memory of middle school, I was in an SP program. So you have SP classes, right? And then you have those regular classes. So a student with a 90 and above average in an SP classes and a student with a 90 or above in a regular class, is it weighed the same?
Of course. Mr. Bergini, can you answer?
So all seventh grade grades are being weighed the same.
So they're all the seventh grades, the grades are weighed the same. So there's a question there about fairness, right? I mean,
but the SP class work are far more challenging than the regular class. There's no equity there.
just voicing our opinion. But here.
So I'm in the same position as Wendy. My child is not at that stage yet, so I'm not at that phase yet to fully, understand obviously the challenges that a lot of the parents are feeling. Their aches and pains that they're going through. But I will say that I agree, or I'm leaning more towards what Superintendent Mango said and what Mia said, that we're not gonna have, you have to think of it this way, there is no such thing as absolute objectiveness in this way, right? Even the state tests and exams, they're written by people, by teachers, essentially. And the goal of the district or the DOE, at least in most regards, is equity. So we have to try to bridge that gap for a lot of the parents and a lot of the students that haven't gotten that kind of a chance before, right? And in this sense, I think DOE is making that effort, but that was an excellent suggestion that as parents, we have to then come to a better compromise. and ask for better terms, because that is something that is attainable. You know, we're not gonna have absolute 100% merit-based criteria at this point because of what the city is going through, what the kids are going through, what the parents are going through, right? So we have to, I think, aim for the next best thing. That's what I would add to that.
Thanks for that.
Thank you, Sana. So the issue, and you may not know, Sana, because your children are young. So we are in we take part in a district that's very rigorous. We have students here that from, the early education from before kindergarten, they are working hard towards, preparing for the state exams, and, their goal is to ultimately seek acceptance to the high schools. I can tell you in this district, the numbers that the fact that the city made it a little bit smaller than what it was last year is still going to be a problem, because we're talking about the top 3% of students. We're not talking about top 15%. So, and I get what Venus is saying. We're not going to change that the city wants to, have equity, but we're talking about students in the district where they're high performers and they really work hard. So it's going to affect our district. I'm not saying I'm against equity, but it's going to affect students in our district, and the community needs to understand that now, because, we may be able to work on a resolution. It may not change anything, but we really need to put our voice out to the DOE of what the community wants, especially our community. So it's a very, it's a tough subject, but, I think what Venus was mentioning, we really maybe should do some type of compromise at least. But I think the way that things are now, we're still at a disadvantage in our district.
I just want to ask, because my child is also in elementary school, so I am not, but I'm also aware of this situation. So I have a question. Is there any way that we could put some certain percentage, like school grade 80%, maybe 20% towards the state test? Is there any way that we could figure things out in that way?
So I couldn't quite make out the specifics of your suggestion. I think we can keep a conversation open about this. Today we are just a few hours into this year's process, and we want to focus on making sure everyone has information about how things are going to be working this year. In terms of defining merit for future years, we're more than happy to come back and engage on that at another time.
Okay, is there anybody else? I have a member here. Please say your name.
Yes, my name is Bushra, and my son is in first grade, so he has some time and I have some time to think about middle school and high school. And I'm an immigrant, so I'm new to this whole American school system as well. But all this conversation has got me thinking that what is the purpose of school, right? Why do you go to school? So it prepares you for your job or your next profession that you want to have. And I was thinking, if it's preparing kids or my kid to be the next doctor or next engineer, I would want to be treated by a doctor who has that capacity and the knowledge. And one way to judge that is through achievements or academic achievement or scores, right? So if we are saying that we want to decrease the percentage of top achievers or scorers, does that mean that we're electing to have kids, future doctors and engineers who score less and are not as smart as or achieving academically as high as others? That's just my question or a thought that I have.
Can I add something?
Mr. Bergine, are you able to, is there a question or is it a comment you can answer to?
So yeah, so thanks for that. I think ultimately, a lot of what we're getting at here is sort of what is merit, sort of how should we identify the kids who are selected. In our engagement, there was a wide range of what we heard. We are saying to 85% of families, 85% of our New York City students, you're going to go behind in line to these top 15%. We hear voices who want that top 15% to be smaller, want it to be bigger. I think regardless of who's getting in, the purpose of our schools is to educate our New York City kids and help them get set up for careers like doctors or whatever they choose. But I'm hearing, the feedback on sort of how we define merit, certainly here in District 25, and I can pass that feedback along.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love this discussion, by the way. It's so informative and educational, and you get to hear so many different perspectives. So thank you, everybody, for that. And Bushra, that was a great point. I want to throw a curveball at you, if I may. Right? We all obviously want to be treated by or have the top people representing society, right? The top folks creating society, being at the top positions, being able to formulate and facilitate things. But at the same time, when we focus so much on merit, whereas we're defining merit specifically by academic grades and by intellect, are we in a way ignoring emotional intelligence? Are we in a way ignoring that there's such a thing as compassion as well? But I rather want to go to a doctor that's really good at what they do, but lacks compassion, right? There's book smart, they're really good, but lacks compassion because they've just had a very specific group of people that they have, been encircled with, and that's the exposures that they've had their entire life. Or would I want to go to somebody who knows what they're doing, right? They're book smart, they're really good at what they're doing, but at the same time, they're compassionate. They're able to understand the spectrum. They're able to understand that there is a range of expertise and skills and strengths, and even sometimes our weaknesses can play to where we are in life, and they can allow us to better understand other people. So I think the other, the other side of this debate, right? The folks that are, that we're saying the top of the top, right? The cream of the cream, they now have to compromise with, and they have to adjust with sort of like the other, let's say 10, 15% of the people that are coming in and are going to have a chance at that opportunity to excel or to have accelerated learning. Are they really losing out? Is that top of the top? Are they really at a disadvantage by having that extended exposure, by having that group?
I want to come back. Sure. Just because I know this is the usual counter argument given, but I would say we don't judge whether the same people whom you're saying are maybe low achievers, but they could be bad, compassionate people as well. Not bad is not the right word, but so there's no way to say that if you're saying a top achiever cannot be compassionate as well at the same time.
Yes, that's true.
Understood. I'm gonna just give it to Mr.
I'm sorry. I'm not really challenging you. I'm just sharing with you my concerns as a former educator and as a parent. I know of a school, they have 2 SP classes. 22 of the 58 kids got offers from Thompson Harris because these kids all got either 1 wrong, 2 wrong, or perfect scores on their 7th grade statewide exam. My concern is you put these students together in the same class as the kid who's a 15% kid. How is that poor child who is top 50% from a mediocre district survive? Or you're gonna hang the teacher because the teacher can't teach to that child. Most teachers teach to the middle, most, which is bad. You should divide student by ability, let everybody rise to their potential. Teach to the middle means the top kids don't learn as much. The bottom kids may still be bottom kids, and they teach to the middle kids. Nobody reaches their potential except the middle kids.
Because we're doing like this whole discussion. Again, when I speak, it's not for us. It's for your average everyday parent, right? I want parents to be empowered around how this system works. I don't want parents in certain communities in Northern Queens to continue with this conversation when the city has made its decision. They've already decided and put in policy what they're doing. So you pleading to them and telling them how important grades are is a ship that has sailed. So we want to set our parents who are going to be applying into high school next year up for success with how the algorithm works now. And the algorithm now is with this 15%. And if parents in the community want something different, you have to learn how to attend your local CEC meeting, organize and demand that CECs create resolutions every week with specific numbers and stop holding on to the past. Merit is gone completely. So now you have to reimagine and reinvent what rigor and merit looks like in the New York City public school system. And it's not gonna look like state exams because the kids bombed during the pandemic. So now you can say, well, let's create some outside tests. Let's bring some experts in and let's have tests at tutoring center, the community center, and create our own standards and present it to the DOE and make demand instead of saying the same thing over and over. We want merit-based. It's gone completely. But we want to empower parents on the streets of Flushing and Northern Boulevard to really understand, I know what we used to have, but tell me what you want now. And don't mention the past, because we're not getting that back.
Thank you, Venus. But you know what, the CEC can do a resolution that we demand upon the city that they change the requirements, and we can ask for perhaps some type of merit-based component. But the fact of the matter is, we're not a school board, we don't make that decision. DOE makes that decision, but we need to speak up as a community. So I do know that we have a resolution that's on the table. I'm missing half of it, so we'll bring it up next month. But it's something that we'll consider. But I'd like to get more feedback from the community, because I know what I've been hearing. I don't know what other CEC members have been hearing. And look, I would ask that all schools, for all students, give opportunities and excellent education. But the reality is, what happened last year, and I know because I've spoken to parents of kids that had 99 average and did not make one of the schools they applied for, they pulled out of the city. They went to parochial school or they moved out to Long Island. So we lost a lot of students, and we don't want that to happen anymore.
But you're saying it like the DOE cares. They know
They know, but maybe we need to speak up louder and we need to, want a resolution, is my point. Okay?
Venus, I understand they made a decision that this ship could be wrong. So that's still what's best.
I agree, but us talking about it without presenting it with a document means nothing.
So perhaps it's clear that we really need to vote on a resolution and get it out. And, it's something we'll talk about. Matthew, I don't want to be disrespectful to you. I think I have just one more follow-up question. Are you still here?
I'm still here.
Okay.
Hi, thank you. My name is Eden Rubenstein. My comment, it's more of a comment than a question, but it kind of piggybacks off of what's been said. And going back to the kids that do have those lower grades, I myself was a child who didn't have the best grades in school, but it wasn't because I didn't know what I was doing per se in school. It was because I myself was somebody that wasn't diagnosed as having an issue with taking test exams. And it turned out after I graduated college, they first figured out that I have a problem with it. And because of that, I had those average grades. And some of these kids might not have parents that are willing to really speak up and actually advocate for their children in that sense. So we have to advocate for them in order for these children to get that help. And that's really what I wanted to speak up on, because if we're not advocating for them, sometimes those kids might not ever get that chance to have that help. So yes, merit-based might be gone, this and that, but we need to start planning for next year at this point, even if we are going to look at a resolution in order to try to possibly make any change towards this year. But we need to start planning towards next year and starting to put something in place to help for next year for the kids that are going to be affected next year at this point, and see what we can look at to make it better for them, because it affects all kids, not just those top kids that aren't getting into those schools or those kids with the lower grades that aren't getting into the schools. We really need to look at it for both sides and really see what the best picture is for both worlds.
Understood. Thank you, Eden. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you again. I have one more comment here from Shirley, who sits on our council.
Thank you. Aside from what I asked before, this, let's say we put this on a plan, because what we worry really is our children. We could talk, adults could talk, but the outcome, kids gonna face it, right? So what we are worried is not just trying to make merit student to get better, it's more like, you know, when you're in a room, and you know yourself that you're not better than other people, then you get discouraged. And then teachers somehow, I'm not saying the teachers are like that, but you get to see that there's 100 perfect score students kind of that, and you're only one that scores 70, but you're put in a room together, then you get more discouraged. And I think in a way, we're not only speaking out just for students who's doing academically well, but we also have to look for the student who's also getting, I'll say, 80s, 90s, and put into the high academic children's, then we have to also consider that part as well. So that's all.
So yes, it's interesting. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with the, with the scores of those students that are admitted this year into like Townsend Harris, how that school performs based on the changes, right? We don't know. But I want to say just one thing that about, change and whatnot. So, this was a district that we did not have screen programs in middle schools. We just basically had, the superintendent can tell you that we gave that opportunity to all of our students, right? Regions Ready for All and whatnot. So
remember, this is my district. So
yeah, so this district.
I had the biology
so,
in the 7th grade. I had the US history.
Got it. So now we have the new city requirement that we should allow for screen processes in our middle schools, and we gave that options to the SLTs. And I'm surprised only 3 schools opted for it. So that's an interesting thing to take into consideration. If there are no other questions, does Mr. Cowie, you here?
Yeah, I guess I had I guess 2 follow-up questions. I do agree with the comment that there are other factors besides grades, but the problem is that currently in our school system, there is no way to measure EQ, emotional quota, or any other kind of behavior metrics easily, right? So that's a problem. And then as they go to high school and when they do application to the college and stuff like that, when they write essays and talk to different people, interview, that makes the most sense at that level. I don't know if at 8 or 9-year-old, for a 9-year-old or 11-year-old, it's hard to kind of see if they have those factors in there, right? So that's my comment on that. But the question I have for the admission, gentleman on the admission, I don't understand this logic, right? Your logic is that state tests are no good, yet you allow 25 schools to have screens that are basically admission tests. So I don't understand this logic. On one hand, you're saying, tests are no good, yet you allow 25 schools to have tests, but not all the other high schools. So I don't understand this logic of how you are selectively allowing some school to have tests and not some school to have additional screen. And if you're so against tests, why are you allowing these 25 schools to have tests to get in?
Are we referring to the Shazad?
Yeah, no, additional tests, not the 25, the additional screen.
Of the state exam.
Not the state exam. Yeah, instead of using state exam, you use additional screen at 25 schools. So I don't understand the logic. Right?
About between 20 and 25 schools where there's an additional admissions assessment. Those are almost entirely essays or interviews. And those are schools who are looking to bring in either a diverse range of learning styles or to learn more about how a kid learns. So they are, I wouldn't call them tests. They're softer assessments.
Yes, but I guess my argument is that how is that any fair? Those writing assessment any fair than the state exams? Because if I'm an immigrant, I'm not a non-native English speaker. I'm going to be at disadvantage in writing essay in a time essay, right? Versus somebody who's a native speaker, right? Yet I don't have math scores are not accounted for. My science scores are not accounted for in the state exam, right? So how is that fair to somebody like that? So that's what I'm saying. How are you determining? You just arbitrarily picking what's fair, not fair, because I don't think that makes sense. You're allowing some school to have it, not some other school to have it. So that makes, number one, you decide which school is allowed to have and not allowed to have, number one. And each one could have one that doesn't take into account math, right? And then yet every other test, every other grades in the core class is always balanced between technical and non-technical, right? So I don't understand this logic of where one essay would determine if you get to the high school or not, versus a full 3 year of effort and grades and track record for a student.
Yeah, so I can definitely pass that feedback along. I will say through the pandemic, these schools that have been doing assessments continue to do it. Testing generally has been disrupted for years now because of the pandemic. And as I mentioned, this past spring was not quite a regular year with the tests yet, which I think is a distinction, although I follow what you're saying and can share that with you.
Like I said, look, it's a difficult situation. It's a hard problem to solve. There's just not enough resources. There's not enough things to do. I understand all that, but I'm just saying you can't arbitrarily pick it. You have to be fair to every school. You allow every school to have additional screening, not allow any school to have additional screening. You can't kind of pick and choose winners, right? And allow in favor in some school and not other school. And it's also adding confusion. You haven't reduced transparency because you got 25 schools that has additional screen on it, right? So you really haven't done the transparency that you guys all claim, right? So that's all my feedback was. You got to be fair to all this high school and all the people. And you can't just be picking and choosing which one's going to be a winner, which one's going to be allowed to have additional screens. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Cobb. Mr. Puccini, do you have anything else?
No, I just want to thank everyone. I know everyone's busy, so the fact that you came here, both to sort of listen and also to share with us your views,
I have
perspectives.
one more constituent that has a question for you, if you mind.
Nope, not at all.
Thank you. Mr. Suhu?
Hey, Matt, how are you doing? CC 26. So I want to echo what everyone's saying at CC 25. Although the admissions process is better than last year, a little bit, the fact is it's still a de facto lottery for those schools that receive so many applicants that exceeds the number of seats. And the fact that, it's still a lottery, the kids who receive a bad lottery number will not get into any of the 12 choices. So that is still flawed. And I'm not sure how you can address that. For those kids, they could have a 97, 98 average just by the fact of receiving a bad lottery number means that they cannot get into any of the schools on their list of 12 choices. So I think the only possible solution is to let schools determine that minimum cutoff score, whether it's 90, 95, or whatever it is. That's the only way to remedy that situation. So I think you have to consider that.
Thanks for that, Al.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Suhu. Is this something that the city's willing to consider? I mean, it's not going to happen for this year. I mean, I guess we need to speak a little louder.
Yeah, and I think we appreciate all of this feedback. As I said, our goal, our office's goal, our team's goal for the next 2 months is to help make sure we get as many high school applications in to help families make thoughtful choices in their applications between now and December 1st. So these are important conversations. We're glad to participate. Our energy is really invested in making sure the 74,000 people going through this year's process are able to do so, equipped with the tools to sort of make the smart decisions. So I think that's where our focus lies right now, but we are happy to jump back in and continue these conversations moving forward.
So thank you. And I just want to say I appreciate the conversation that we had here tonight. And I want to thank the CEC for really ensuring that there's outreach to the community and that different perspectives were heard. And I just love that we're so respectful of each other and each other's opinions. And I really appreciate the conversation today. I went back and forth so many times. I was like, I agree. But I do want to say, because I think this is very important, is that I've worked with Matt for a while now. He's worn many different hats in enrollment. He's actually worked with me to make some of the really powerful decisions that we have that makes District 25 the amazing space it is, just in terms of our middle school choice programs and different opportunities that we have that puts us in a different space than other districts. I will tell you that Matt is an advocate for districts, and as a superintendent, there were things that if, he couldn't give what I was asking, you could tell that he was very thoughtful, and today your opinions and voices will go back to central enrollment. I don't want you to think that he was just sent here to listen. He is very thoughtful and wants to do what's best for kids in enrollment and where he works. So I want to thank you, Matt, for that, because I know we've had a lot of conversations prior to this about different things, but I know also about admissions, and I know that you stay up at night thinking about what's best for kids and what's the best way we can
I appreciate that.
make this process.
I appreciate that, Superintendent Domingo. And I have jotted down some notes that I will share with the head of our office and with leadership. So I do appreciate everyone's time here tonight.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Superintendent. So Matt, this is, I'm going to conclude this portion, and I thank you again for joining us.
Of course.
We didn't mean to put you on the spot, but we hope that you relay the
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Central.
You will.
It's a hot topic, and I don't think we're finished, but we appreciate that you came to our district to speak this evening. Thank you.
We'll keep talking. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, have a wonderful evening.
You too. Take care.
So I'm still going to entertain public comments, but I want to move on to the next portion of our meeting. We have Dr. D'Antona, who's here, who's going to give us the state of the district. Maybe you want to sit here. I don't think I can move. Are you okay with me? Everyone sit with me?
I will miss one.
Want to get front center camera?
There you go, next to me.
Camera wise? Look at this. Okay, good evening, everyone. Yeah, sorry, excuse my back. I apologize for that. So I'm going to go through a little bit of a state of the district, share a little bit about where we are currently in both ELA and mathematics across the district. The embargo was lifted a few weeks ago, so we are now able to share our district performance in both ELA and mathematics. So that's what I'm going to do for you today. And before I start with sharing about this particular set of information, is it's just so important for Superintendent Domingo and I that everyone's eyes are on the information. Through the lens of where are we can't necessarily rewind back, but we can move forward from where it is that we currently are. And you will notice that there is space inside of our data that says we have work to do in both ELA and in mathematics. But at the same time, we can say that given the context of where we have been, we're super proud of our building leaders and our staff for pushing as hard as they could to get our kids into a space of improvement. So having said that, Louis, you can move forward with the slide. So things that I'm going to share with you, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about district data by grade. So we'll have a small little segment around grade 3 to 5. I chunked in grades 3 to 5 and 6 to 8 because both of those segments tell a different story when you look at it. If you look at the data all together, it looks like there is clear improvement across our district schools. When you look at them separately, you see that it tells a little bit of a different story, which I want you guys to be able to see. So we're going to talk about that in the context of ELA. We're going to talk about that in the context of mathematics. Okay, Louis? But, so as you all know, or if you don't know, our district vision is around building strong roots, building those strong foundations for our kids across schools. This includes building opportunities to promote the 5 pillars of reading, which includes phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. We believe if we're doing those things well, that our kids are going to be in a good space in terms of their academics and preparedness from elementary school to middle school and from middle school to high school and beyond. Currently, after this particular round of assessments, District 25 is ranked 5th amongst all districts in New York City in reading performance. While we have made gains, and you'll see that in just a moment, we do have additional work that we need to do, and I'll talk a little bit about what that work will be. So in District 25, our overall performance on the New York State assessment was 62.6% of our children performing at levels 3 and 4. What is interesting about this data for me was also about the connections to iReady. And it's our assessment tool that we're using across district schools. And for our parents and our families and our students, really super important for you guys to know what that data says and what it means for you as a learner. So what you'll see there is there was a 10% difference between what iReady said we would perform at and what how we performed on the New York State assessment. And primarily the biggest difference we saw was in our upper grades, in our middle schools, in terms of why that difference actually showed up. We did see a 1.9% improvement overall in District 25 and a 2.5% reduction in children performing at level 1, which is what we want. We don't want our students to be living in that space of not meeting standards. Comparatively speaking to the city, that's okay, Louis, you can go forward. 49% of children across New York City were at levels 3 and 4, compared to us at 62.6%. In terms of grades 3 to 5, what we wound up seeing was that comparatively speaking, and what you'll see on this slide is a comparison from 2022 to 2019, the last assessment where all of our kids were able to, the last time that all of our students were able to be administered the assessment. What we did see was that overall performance in grades 3 to 5 was lower compared to 2019. Grade 4 exhibited the greatest difference, nearly 8% difference in performance for our students in grade 8. Grade 3 performed about 3%, a little over 3% lower, and grade 5 was just about 0.2% lower than what it had been in previous years. We did see a change in level 1 performance, which in some cases, which is what we want to see, particularly in grade 5. But overall, the performance for students in grades 3 to 5, comparatively speaking to 2019, was a bit lower in these grades. Now, they are not necessarily something that we can have a full comparison because they are different children from across 3 different years, but I'm showing you this just so that you have a little bit of a context as to where we were in 2019 to where we are now. Now, in grades 6 to 8, you're going to see a much different story in terms of the bars. So when you look at the top bar, which is 2022 grade 8 to 2019 grade 8, you'll see the shades of green are a lot larger in 2022 than they were in 2019. The same for grade 7 and the same for grade 6. So the performance in our middle school was different from the performance that we saw for our elementary school students. So students in grades 6 to 8 performed higher than 2019. The greatest difference of 13.6% was in grade 7 in terms of improvement for grade 7 students in 2019. Grade 6 performed about 6.6% difference, and grade 8, was 4.8% difference. So you can see that there is a clear difference between both of those batches of grade levels, which is something that we are focusing on moving forward. Yeah, those. Now, our students with disabilities, we did see a change in terms of overall performance for our children by about 2.6% from where it had been in 2019. So we're always looking, obviously, to seek improvement. But when you look at those bars comparatively speaking to others, our students with disabilities still have a great deal more support that's needed in order to get them to a space where they're moving from that level 1 of not meeting standards to that space of approaching, to that space of meeting or exceeding standards. So, you know, this is an ongoing thing that we're consistently working towards as a district. And in the context of the work that you've heard us talk about a number of times in terms of the MTSS supports that we're building into our schools consistently. But overall, you're going to see that the trend was improvement for our students with disabilities in reading. When you compare the context of performance of our students in grades 3 to 5, children in grade 5 did show a little bit of improvement, comparatively speaking, to grade 4, which we saw a bit of a decline. For students, again, these are different children at much different time periods than when they were assessed, but there was nonetheless a decline for children that performed in grade 4 comparatively to the past. Now, grade 3, we saw improvement, and grade 5, we saw improvement. You will see a similar type of set of data when we move into grade 6 to 8 right now. You'll see that in grade 6 to 8, the performance of our students with disabilities, when comparing 19 to 22, has shown improvement in each of those grade levels when compared to previous years. And what we're seeing is that not only in terms of improvement of children that are on or above, but we did see a significant shift in terms of students that were at level 1. You know, in some cases, we're talking about 10 to 15% decrease in children that were performing at level 1 that are within our students with disabilities population. Having said all of that, we know that we have a lot of work to do inside of this area, even though we did demonstrate some improvement based on previous year's progress. Our English language learners, we typically perform pretty well, comparatively speaking, to New York City. We are in the top 3 in New York City in terms of districts when we're talking about L performance. We grew by over 4.7%, nearly 5% in terms of our L growth. We did see a reduction in the number of students that were performing at level 1 by about 9.9%, almost 10% difference from where we were in 2019. But, and I'm sure all of you would agree, we do not want to see the larger shades of red or orange in any of our documents that we share. However, we are, we're excited about the improvement that we did see there for our Ls. Grades 3 to 5, and this has been a common trend over quite a while now. Typically speaking, our English language learners' performance in grade 3 tends to be our highest, followed by grade 4, followed by grade 5. And primarily, the reason that we do see that is because many of our English language learners that begin in kindergarten are ready to test out and become proficient English speakers by the time they get into the 3rd grade. So typically, the performance for our Ls, they do outperform other grade levels in that grade because of that. Children that perform in grades 4, 5, and above, we have a couple of things that happen. One, it's what they call the L2 stall. Children that cannot get beyond that advanced range, the expanding range on the NICES lab. And on top of that, we wind up getting, as we test out, just as many children as we test out, we get new Ls that also wind up coming in. So it's the consistent cycle of new children coming in that are now English language learners after we've already tested out a whole batch of them. So it's that consistent process that we're working towards improving over time. And it becomes more difficult and something that we're consistently working on when our children are first here for the first time when they get in school 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Because that's a lot of accelerating that we need to do in a short period of time to prepare them for high school. Yeah, Louis. And you'll see here what I'm talking about in terms of performance. Louis, flash back really quickly to the 3rd to 5th. So you can see how the bars completely shift when you move from grades 3 to 5, as Louis is doing it. I don't know if I'm getting busy or we need a little disco ball and then we got something going, Louis. But you can see that there is a definite change in terms of performance with our children in middle school for the 2 reasons that I just expressed. new children that are coming into our schools that are L's, as well as children that we need to move over the hump when we get into those grade levels. Yeah, Louis. So our subgroups. What you will see here, and I've added each of our subgroups, primarily our 4 largest subgroups are our Asian community, which is our largest, followed by our Hispanic population, our white population, and then our Black population. We do have some children that fall into the multiracial and our Native American. Those 2 populations are relatively small, and when I say small, below 1% of our district population. But having said that, for the most part, in District 25, we did see each of our subgroups improve, comparatively speaking, to 2019, with the exception to our Hispanic population. Each of the other subgroups did show improvement compared to the 2019 assessment. Our Hispanic population has been part of one of our targeted subgroups as a district, and will continue to be so as we move forward. So in terms of a plan for improvement, this is something that if you've been part of the CEC meetings already in the past, or if you've been part of Superintendent DeMango's listening and learning tour, you will have heard the conversations around where we want to go in terms of improvement in the context of reading. And all of this begins with, do we understand what our kids need? So a conversation around data. So if you are a parent that's on the SLT, amazing, have that conversation with your schools. What is the data saying? If you are a parent that's not on the SLT and you're just part of the general population, what is the data saying? Asking the questions is really super important. And I think that was based on what you guys were able to do today with other areas that were on the agenda. Same holds true with the information that's coming from your schools. What does it say and what does it mean for us in terms of planning and action? And for us at the district level, engaging in inquiry-based studies around where are we, what are we currently doing in our buildings, and how do we make adjustments to support improved outcomes is the focus of our work. Through the lens of targeted MTSS supports, meaning what does classroom instruction look like on a day-to-day? For children that need additional supports other than the classroom instruction, what are those interventions that we're providing in order to make sure that our children have access? And the CRSE part is a huge component, but we're looking at it through the lens of, do we know our kids really, really well? And if we know them really well, then we can make really good decisions in terms of supporting our instructional practice. So part of this work, we've kind of chunked into different segments. For our children in grades K through 3, our focus is really going to be on those foundational reading skills that we mentioned earlier, focused on programs such as Foundations Integrity, which are phonics and phonemic awareness-based programs. Training, so we have over 360 teachers and administrators that are going to be trained in letters, which is, it's not a program, this is training for teachers to understand how do we teach reading as best as we possibly can for the children that we serve. So that accounts for a very significant portion of our teachers in our early childhood grades. And lastly, inside of K to 3, and which will be across each of those particular chunks, K to 3, 3 to 5, and 6 to 8, are our systems and structures for MTSS. Meaning, do we know our kids well? And if we know them really well, how are we providing the supports necessary for them to improve their current reading proficiency? Grades 3 to 5, as I mentioned, the 5 pillars, MTSS. The one added feature here is we're really excited about. It's a Clavis L pilot. And Clavis is really all about building language for our English language learners. And we're strategic and we're excited about this because this particular program targets our children in grades 4 and 5, where we start to see the change in performance for our kids. This is an intervention program that will occur 3 times a week for 30 minutes for children that are participating in this particular pilot. So we will continue to monitor this over the year. And as we get into the benchmarking portions of our school year. I'm sure, if you guys are okay, I'll be happy to come back and share with you where we are as a district in terms of how we're performing. And then grade 6 to 8 is really about the close reading of text, focus on nonfiction, MTSS, and Superintendent Domingo has talked about this a lot. Going from that space of learning to read to reading to learn is a real focus for us as a district. So this kind of encompasses, in a nutshell, based on what we've learned from our district data, specifically in our early childhood grades, that we do need to spend additional time focused on those foundational skills for our kids, so that they are prepared for all those things that come to them when it's time to read to learn, rather than to learn to read. Yeah, Louis. So in math, what you're going to see is consistent with what's happened in New York City as a whole. So New York City saw a change of about 5%, about 7% overall in terms of a decline in performance. That similar pattern has existed with us as well. So we did see a change to the downside in terms of overall math performance in District 25. Our goal here is that we're continuing to promote rigorous math tasks that really support productive struggle of our kids and conceptual understanding. We do currently rank 3rd among all districts in, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. That should be in mathematics, not reading. 3rd in amongst all districts. District 2 and District 26 had higher rates of proficiency in mathematics compared to us in District 25.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to
Thanks, Joe.
share that. Thank you, Mr. Chow, for transparency is something that you'll never be able to say that I'm not. So one of the important parts for us in this area, and as you'll see, we'll go through the data in this content as well. We've spent a lot of time over the past several years in building practices through Algebra for All and our work with Bank Street College, particularly for our teachers in grades K through 3. We're going to continue to foster that work across our schools. We do believe in it. We do believe that it is really good work. Our schools and their teams are going to be consistent in pushing towards that end, as individual schools, but certainly us as a district. The context of productive struggle and rigorous math tasks is what's going to promote thinking. And that's really what we want for our kids. What we have learned and what we have seen is that this interruption that we have had has had its impact on that work. So Louis, go ahead. So overall, we went from, in 2019, we went from just under 66% performance in mathematics to 58.4%, a change of 7.4% overall for us as a district community. This included an increase in children performing at level 1. Comparatively speaking to New York City, we were over 20% difference in terms of children performing at levels 3 and 4, comparatively speaking to citywide averages. So the story in mathematics is a bit different than the story that you saw in reading, where you saw grades 3 to 5 perform at a lower rate in reading than 6 to 8. You're going to see the exact opposite in math. So children in grades 3 to 5, although we did see a little bit of a decline in grades 3 to 5, they performed at a higher rate than what we saw in grades 6 to 8. And I'm going to talk about one grade in particular in a few moments that show that if you look at the numbers, you'll see a major decline, but there are some variables in there that you wouldn't know unless I shared it with you now. So in grades 3 to 5 overall, the comparison that we compared lower as to 2019. Grade 4 and 5 exhibited the greatest difference of about 8% less of our students on or above grade level. while grade 3 performed about 3.8% lower. Grades 3 to 5 demonstrated an increased percentage of students at level 1 when comparing to the 2019 assessment. Yeah, those. So you can see here just by our bars that there's more orange and red here than were in the previous slide. Students in grades 6 to 8 did perform lower overall, comparatively speaking to 2019. Grade 8 showed the greatest difference in performance, was over 15% lower. Now, one of the causal agents to this is we had a significant number of children not take this assessment this year because they were assessed using the mathematics regents. So we had about 800 more children take the regents this year than previous years. So when you reduce the number of children that are taking the assessment, it will impact the overarching performance that we wound up having in grade 8. So one of the variables is that we had far less children take it because they were taking the regents. That does not mean that we don't have a lot of work to do there, but it does mean that's one of the variables that were at play in grade 8 in particular.
Were you able to, how come you didn't include the results of the regents exam?
So
Study based on assessments?
Yeah, so it's a different assessment. I can talk to you about that as well. So in grade 6 and 7, there was a decrease as well of children performing on or above by 11.9% for grade 6 and 6.7% for grade 7. So lots of work that we still need to do in mathematics. I do believe that us coming back into a space where we are now is going to impact that simply because mathematics is something that, when I think about, digital tools, they're great, but sometimes children need to be able to kind of feel those manipulatives, see those manipulatives, be able to have deeper conversations about it. So, I'm very hopeful that a lot of the things that we had been working on and working towards, we can get back to a lot of those things in a much more meaningful way this school year. Yeah, Louis. Our students with disabilities, you're going to notice a similar type of pattern across each of those areas. So as performance in general across grades wound up declining, you're going to see similar patterns across our students with disabilities. You're going to see similar patterns across our Ls, and you will see similar patterns across our subgroups. So each of them in their own way did demonstrate a decline in overall performance. In terms of our students with disabilities, it was roughly about 4% difference between where they were in 2019, comparatively speaking, to where we are now. Similarly, you're going to see that those patterns exist across our grades. 2019 performance was at a higher rate across grades 3, 4, and 5 when we're talking about our students with disabilities. The differences between those range from 1.5% to over 6% for our children in grades 3 through 5. Okay, Louis. In grades 6 to 8, you're going to see, and Louis, just flash it back. You're going to see how that difference also between our elementary school and middle school exists, particularly with our students with disabilities when we're talking about mathematics. And a space for us that we're consistently concerned about is certainly the children that are performing and not meeting standards. The percentage is significant, and it's something that we are working towards. Yeah, Louis. Our L performance, as I mentioned, similar pattern in terms of overall performance, comparatively speaking. It was about a 9% difference from where we were in 2022 to where we were in 2019, to 2022. As I mentioned, the performance is rather consistent in mathematics in terms of seeing that downward trend. You got those. It's similar patterns across all grade levels. And this is also something that is is pretty clear. Each of our subgroups, I only included our top 4 subgroups in this particular area. The most significant impact in terms of mathematics performance was for our children of color. Our Black and Hispanic students did show the largest difference in terms of performance, comparing 2019 to 2022. It is an area that we're going to continue to work on, certainly as a district. And the one that's not on here that I think is really important for all of us to focus on, especially for our boys. We do see a significant change for our boys, comparatively speaking to girls. That primarily in reading, not so much in math. There's about a 10% difference in reading when we're comparing boys to girls. I'm sorry, I didn't mention that earlier. When we're talking about reading, then when we're talking about mathematics. Math is very, very close in terms of relationship. The difference in reading is nearly 10% and that's across subgroups. So regardless of subgroup, it's over 10% or more difference in that relationship. So that same pattern exists here in terms of our subgroup performance. Each of our subgroups in mathematics did show a decline, comparatively speaking, to 2019. Go ahead, Louis. So this is a really, really important part of our data set that all of us as a collective community really need to be talking about. You know, as certainly at the district level, we're going to be talking about it. At the school level, we're going to be talking about it. And our families really need to be thinking about chronic absenteeism. What you're going to see on the next slide is the disparity in performance for children that are chronically absent and what it means in terms of overall performance. Now, as a district, 18%, that's almost 3,000 children that are tested children that are chronically absent. As a district, that is really, really significant. So what that means is any child that is out 2 days or more from the start of the year to the end of the year on a monthly basis will be a child that is deemed chronically absent, a child that is out 10% or more of instructional days. All the research is very clear, and for me, it's a very logical thing. If we're not in school, it makes it difficult to learn. You know, and across our subgroups, we have patterns that need to be adjusted in terms of children and their attendance rates in school. Louis, you can go to the next slide. So for children that are chronically absent, perform 26% lower on the ELA assessment when compared to children that are not chronically absent. That's in reading. In mathematics, it was 36% difference. So it is a huge, huge difference when we're talking about performance for children that are consistently in school and not chronically absent, compared to children that are chronically absent. And there are lots of variables. This last year, you know, there are lots of reasons why our children were out. You know, certainly the pandemic did not help in that regard. But nonetheless, it's something we all need to be mindful of and thinking through the supports, because every case, every scenario is different. There's no one thing that we can say, let's do this and it's going to help that particular situation. So our school case teams, every single school has what we call a case team. It's a cultural, attendance, social, emotional learning team. One or two schools have come up with their own little clever name for it, a little bit different from case, but every school has a team that's dedicated to this work. Their focus is monitoring attendance on a daily basis, checking in, creating systems to support, whether that's having buddy systems, mentoring systems. There's lots of different approaches that our schools are taking. But having said that, the problem still exists. We still need to make sure that we're engaging in the outreach that's going to be supportive of each individual family, because it does change from circumstance to circumstance is different. But if we're all having the conversation, sometimes our families don't realize that when their child is out 2 days a month, that technically speaking, they're putting them in a disadvantage. And you've heard me say this before, if that pattern continues from the time they are in kindergarten through the 8th grade, they will miss what's equivalent to 1 year of school. So it's really super important for, for all of us to keep this in mind as we are going through this process. Okay, Louis. Now, just getting back to one of the questions that you had asked, Joe, just in terms of regents. The regents' performance for our district in terms of children that were on or above was at 54% of children that took it across District 25. So we had over 1,300 children in the district were assessed in that area. So lots of room that we have to grow in there as well.
When you say you mean 85 or higher?
So level 3 is from 80 to 84, and then a level 4 is 85 and above.
You should look at level 3 and 4, because
Yeah.
level 3 is defined to be college, right?
Yeah.
No, it's not. But they use
Yeah, I got you. Yep. But I mean, any questions about anything that I've shared?
Thank you, Dr. Bitcoin. I'm actually really excited this coming year because during the pandemic, my daughter was in first grade and it was completely we were at home. And then it was hybrid in her, or maybe I'm mistaken, to start a hybrid and then, in second grade she went back. And it was a time where she started foundation in first grade and she started to, learn to read. And I was worried that she wouldn't be able to catch up on the reading, right? So I'm really looking forward to see this year because now she's in third grade and she's going to take that assessment.
So thank you for that. One of the things that, as I had mentioned before, and Dr. D'Antona spoke about the way we look at student performance on state exams, we also use iReady and Acadian's exams, and we measure those introductory reading skills, that learning to read skills. And if you see in what he presented before, we're looking very closely at 3rd and 4th grade students to make sure that we're catching up on some of the gaps that may have occurred because they were home, but even when they were in school learning foundations, they were learning with a mask, right? And a lot of that is really about hearing and listening to sound. So we have already engaged in these deep conversations with our principals, as well as our assistant principals. In turn, they've done that with their teachers. And then Dr. D'Antona and I, over the past month and a half, have been going from school to school and engaging with data chats with our principals to see how they are further planning to support these learners through MTSS to help them catch up, but at the same time to experience on grade level, 3rd grade level work.
Yeah, and what you'll also see just really quickly is that you and your SLTs and our schools are engaging in similar types of conversations that we're having here now, but at the individual school level. How are they performing at the individual school level, and what are the things that they are putting in place in order to make, to support the needs of the children that they have in front of them.
And I know we've spoken about this before, but I think now more than ever, it's very important for parents to speak to schools about their MTSS plans, right? Because that work is around how we're fixing learning gaps over different cycles of learning, right? So we talked about the 3 tiers, which is tier one, which is support that happens within the class. Tier 2 is a cycle of learning for a shorter period of time, and then tier 3 is more intensive learning. So it's really important that parents, like you said, if that's your concern, to really talk about the current assessments that they've done on your child, and then what systems are in place to close the gaps.
I think Mr. Cole
Hi, Tommy.
has a question, Mr. Cole.
Hi, hey, Dr. Mike, how are you doing? Thanks for the presentation. Great. Oh, no, I'm going to ask a couple of questions. I guess, I'm sorry, I didn't see the chart that well because I'm on my phone, I'm on the way home, but a couple of questions. One, on the ELA, I'm a little confused. I would expect some kind of learning loss yet we improve across the board. And what do you think that is? I know in the math that makes sense. There's a learning loss. So why do you think that is on the ELA? That seems abnormal, right? That's one. And a couple of other questions, but you could start with that one. Okay.
Yeah, so Tommy, one of my thoughts on reasons why that we saw a difference between our 6, 7, and 8, comparatively speaking, to 3 to 5, is our 3 to 5 children were still in the space during the pandemic in that learning to read space, where our children that were in 6, 7, and 8 had already gone through that space of really building those foundational skills to do well, given the context of, new language, new content, and the like by the time they were in that grade. So if for our early childhood children, they, as Danielle mentioned, they did not have the same type of exposure to language the way that the other children did when they were in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. They had already experienced a lot of those foundational supports that were still done, but they were done in a different way. When you're doing that with a mask, it's certainly different from doing that absent the mask. So yeah.
Additionally, Tommy, we continued even throughout the pandemic with our professional learning for our teachers around language and literacy through rich and engaging text, a focus on vocabulary. So we worked very hard to ensure that our schools maintained that focus on literacy and were challenging students to continue to grow in that area within the 3 to 8 range.
Okay, thank you. And then second question is, to measure learning loss, have you looked at the analysis of, let's say, 3 grades or 2 or 3 grades separate, the same cohort, right? Who took in 22, like 3 years later, right? Or 2 years later versus the same cohort, right? In theory, at the aggregate level, they should be very similar if there was no learning loss. Like you something, right?
So,
at 3rd grade?
What's interesting, Tommy, is the children in grades 6, 7, and 8, they would have been in grades 3, 4, and 5 when the pandemic started. Mm-hmm. So children in grade 6 have the same performance that again, it's not 100% apples to apples. Not every kid in cohort 1 was in this new cohort of kids. But grade 6 was identical. Grade 7 was an improvement by, I think it was 3.8%. And grade 8 improved by about 13% in reading compared to where they were in 5th grade. Now, in a traditional scenario, if you look at our cohorts in the past, children in 5th grade tended to improve over the course of grade 6, 7, by the time they got into 8th grade in District 25. We typically saw an upwards trend after they were in grade 5, because I know you and I have talked about in the past, Tommy, grade 5 often became a grade level for whatever reason. We wound up seeing a little bit of a dip, and then we went into middle school and we wound up improving. So those cohorts actually show that there was improvement. It's not a deep enough analysis to do a comparison between children, but that's certainly something I could do.
Okay, and then, so you still have that dip that we always see, right? We've seen this for like 4th and 5th, where there's a arbitrary dip that's significant, like 5 to 6% that we can't explain. Okay, that's still happening. Now, the other question, I guess, is have you thought about maybe remote learning is better for certain type of tests or certain subject? I mean, I don't know if that's something to consider. I don't know how you would measure it. Not quite sure.
We've definitely spoken about that, Tommy, and we've said that emerging from the pandemic is a time to really look at how some of the remote or online tools that we used were successful for students. What we can say also, though, and what we hear from parents too, is that for right now, the kids are just excited to be back in groups and working together and sharing their learning in the ways that we were always successful in. But we have engaged in those discussions, and many of our schools are using some of the tools that they learned and expanded upon during the pandemic.
Okay, the only reason I mention it is that it seemed to be at all the different aggregate level. The same thing seemed to be happening, where they outperform. It's improved in the ELA at the city level, at the borough level, at the district level, and that's at some school level, right? If you look at the data. So it seems to imply either the test changed and got easier, or the learning or online learning or whatever the way it was taught seemed to have caught on, right? It was more effective, I guess. One of those two seems to be the explanation, I guess.
Interesting point, and thank you, Mr. Carr. I did let you go beyond that 2 minutes, but I know I just pushed the time. Because it is 9:15 and we have more items in our agenda. I do want to just comment on like some discussions that we had earlier this evening. So I'm just curious about how many students had opted out of the assessments. Do you have the numbers and percentages?
I don't have that handy, but I can get that.
Yeah, I'm just curious to see what that is and to see the effects of what is going now. What's going to happen with the the seventh graders? My focus would now be on the seventh graders and the fourth graders, right? And the effects of the screen admissions.
Yeah,
right.
I can get that. That's not
okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. D'Antona. Mr. Shah's a comment?
Yeah, but may I just add to what you said? If you make state exam part of the admissions criteria, fewer children will opt out. You have to obviously want the children to take the test to measure their progress. Right? You don't want them to opt out. You want them to take it so you can measure their progress. If you use that, make that part of the admissions for high school, then every parent will then encourage the child to take it.
Yeah, that was definitely surfaced today, and it was something that I asked Matt to.
So that, like you indicated, the assessment is not taken for. Under the DOE's view of it, it's for assessing the students. It's not taking it for the exam, the entrance into high schools. But the reality is that parents are using that. We're using that, so it could kind of change things.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so thank you, Dr. D'Antona, and thank you, members of the public. I know we have a couple of people that do want to speak, but we need to get on to our new business. And because we still have a quorum present, I do want to address, we need to vote on our budget. We already spoke about it at our last meeting, and I want to talk about amending our bylaws so we can provide for hybrid meetings, right? So the budget is probably the easier one. You all have the budget in your folders, and CDC members that are here virtually, maybe Carly, you can put it up.
Trying, I don't know why it's
Who's our treasurer?
Sure.
You want to talk about the budget, Sharon? I'm putting you on the spot. You want to talk? Carly, you want to talk?
So the budget is 15,976. Member reimbursement will be 3,000. That includes CC members, anything babysitting, transportations, any reimbursement fees. And purchasing card will be 4,325. Supply lines are 4,325. We obviously after 3,000, we divide it equally 3. So now supply lines are something that we use, CC members and our assistant Carly, for any print, ink, papers, anything to do with our meeting. And also meeting expenses will be also 4,325. This includes actually our award ceremonies. We do yearly award ceremonies. We need to prepare the awards and anything. Last year, because we did virtually, hopefully this coming year we'll be able to do it in person. So we consider that part and then put the expenses in there.
What's purchasing card?
Credit card for Carly to use for the event, like a water. She needs to go out and get water, yes, anything.
So up until now, Carly was not able to use the budget because we never voted on it. So that money's been stagnant. We really need to vote on the allocation of the money. We can rearrange it, correct, Carly? I think we have until what, February?
No, March.
March, okay, so but we really should vote on the budget the way it is. I understand what you did. You divvied it up equally, which is fine. I don't know if we've been using member reimbursement, but I think for the time being, if we leave it at 3,000, I'm okay with it, but we need to vote on it, right? So if anybody has any questions, this is the time on the council. If anyone has any questions, this is the time to ask the question. Anybody here? Anybody remotely?
Um,
Sana has a question.
Yeah, just so I understand, the number 15,000, that doesn't include the administrative salary, right?
That's after the fact.
That's after, okay, okay, got it.
So we already voted on the
Right.
administration, so that came off the table because it's something that's gonna come out of our budget yearly. So we only have 15,976, and this is the way we have it for the time being. Any other questions from council members? So let's go through the roll call vote to approve the budget, so then we can start, so Carly can start doing what she needs to do.
Joseph Di Benedetto,
Approve?
Wing Yu,
Approved.
Anne Marie Knable,
Approve.
Joseph Chow,
Approve.
Sun Young Lee, Michelle Frederick,
Approve.
and Sana Tayeb.
Okay, so the budget is hereby approved, and that's the way it stands. Carly, you put that in our minutes, and you'll relay that to the appropriate authorities, right?
Yeah.
Next, we have to talk about our bylaws. So under the current bylaws, we do not allow for video conferencing. We only are allowed to do video conferences because of the exception to the emergency, I forgot the name of the act, but the mayor of the city of New York extended it through the end of this month, I believe, correct? It usually gets extended on a monthly basis. We don't know if it's going to be extended through November or thereafter, but we need to be prepared to amend our bylaws. And I believe our bylaws provide that if we ask for an amendment, we have to read it to the public and then vote on it? Or did we already read it to the public?
So are you doing the bylaw amendment, or are you doing just the resolution to actually have a hybrid meeting?
So
You gotta vote to.
we need to
even
do
vote
both.
hybrid
We need
first.
to do both, right? So I read the drafts of the hybrid meeting resolution, I believe it was last month, correct? Or I remember I spoke about it to the community. Okay, so why don't can you bring that up to the, perfect. Does anybody want to read it, or do you want me to read it?
I can't see.
You can't, so I'll read it.
It's in
okay.
your
So it's in the
folders.
chart, so I'm gonna read it, and then I'm gonna ask if you guys are interested in voting on enforcing a resolution, okay? So this is regarding the hybrid meeting resolution draft. I'll read it to the public. Whereas by passing chapter 56 of the laws of 2022, chapter 56, the New York State Legislature amended section 103 of the open meetings law, and whereas chapter 56 adds section 103-A of the open meetings law, permitting the CEC 25 to authorize its members to attend meetings by video conferencing under extraordinary circumstances. And whereas section 103-A2 sub A requires the CEC 25 to adopt a resolution following a public hearing authorizing the limited use of video conferences under such circumstances, and whereas section 103-A sub 2 allows for hybrid meetings by requiring that a minimum number of members are present to fulfill the public body's quorum requirement in the same physical location or locations where the public can attend. And whereas section 103-A sub 2C requires that members be physically present at any such meeting unless such member is unable to be physically present at any such meeting location due to extraordinary circumstances, including disability, illness, caregiving responsibilities, or any other significant or unexpected factor or event which precludes the member's physical attendance at such meeting. And whereas in accordance with section 103-A sub 2D, any members attending by video conference must, except during the executive session, be heard, seen, and identified while the meeting is being conducted, including but not limited to any motions, proposals, resolutions, and any other matter formally discussed or voted upon, And whereas section 103-A sub 2G requires that any meeting where a member attends by video conference be recorded, posted to the CEC 25 webpage within 5 business days, and transcribed upon request. And whereas section 103-A sub 2H requires that members of the public be permitted to attend and participate, if authorized, in any meeting by video conference when a member attends by video conference. Be it resolved that the CEC 25 authorizes its members who experience an extraordinary circumstance as described above and further defined by any rules or written procedures later adopted to attend meetings by video conference. Number 1, as long as a quorum of the members attend in person at one or more locations open to the public. Number 2, as long as the member can be seen, heard, and identified while the open portion of the meeting is being conducted. And number 3, as otherwise permitted under Chapter 56 of the laws of 2022. And be it further resolved that the CEC 25 shall create written procedures further governing its use of video conferences by its members in compliance with Chapter 56 of the laws of 2022. Now, are we okay with voting on this resolution?
I'm okay.
Let's go through the roll call vote.
Joseph DiBenedetto.
Agreed.
Wing Yu.
Approved.
Emery Knable.
Agreed.
Joseph Chow.
Agreed.
Sung Young Lee.
Agreed.
Michelle Frederick.
Agreed.
And Sana Tayeb.
Agreed.
Okay, so the resolution is hereby adopted and made part of this council's decision that we may now operate in a hybrid environment. Next, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Juliana from FACE is here. I believe Eloise is here. Are you here, Eloise?
I am. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Eloise. Nice to see you. So I'm looking at our bylaws, which do not allow us to do video conferencing. In light of the resolution that we just enacted, are we able to modify our bylaws to include video conferencing?
Yes.
So do we need to vote on that?
The vote that you just took was for the same?
Correct. We just did it by way of resolution, and now I wanted to adopt that into our bylaws.
I think it's a good measure to do it just for the record.
Okay, so what I'm asking for, and someone else on the council can correct me if I'm wrong, is that we allow within our part of our CEC meeting here. So we are asking that the following language be added to section 1 of our bylaws, open to the public, and I'll read it to the public, and then we can vote on it, correct? So all meetings shall be open to the public except where otherwise permitted by law. Public notice of meeting shall be given to the community at least 72 hours prior to the date of the meeting through local news media and posted conspicuously in one or more designated public places prior to the meeting as provided by the open meetings law. That's already in our bylaws. What we're asking now is that we add the following language, and it goes as follows. The open meetings law requires that public business be performed in an open and public manner, and that the community be fully aware of and able to observe the performance of public officials and attend and listen to their deliberations and decisions, A limited number of council members may be authorized to attend meetings by video conferencing under extraordinary circumstances as prescribed in Chapter 56 of the laws of 2022, amending Section 103-A of the Open Meetings Law, as we just read in our resolution. So now I'm asking that we take a vote to include that as part of our bylaws. Am I doing this properly, Eloise?
Yes, correct. I'm sorry, it takes me a moment to
It's
unmute.
okay. Thank you.
Correct.
So let's go for a roll call.
Joseph P. Benedetto.
Approve.
Wing Yu. Approve. Anne Marie Knable.
Approve.
Joseph Chow.
Approve.
Sung Yun Lee. Approve. Michelle Frederick. Michelle. Michelle.
Go to the next.
Sana Tayer. Approve. Michelle Frederick.
Approve.
Okay.
So the vote is unanimous of those members present. We have 7 members that agreed to it, so that is, the bylaws are hereby amended to reflect the requirements for the video conferencing. Understand, members of the CEC, we still need to have a quorum present for those members who are not present to be able to join us by video conferencing. So it doesn't mean that, you know, today we have 2, 4, 5 members present. So if this is only when the exception to the open meeting law expires, if that was the case, we would not have quorum, even though we have 3. So we really need to have our members present, which brings us always to the fact that we still have members of the CEC that we're looking to, you know, we're looking to fill in the open vacancies. We have 2 positions open that are supposed to be borough president appointees that were not filled. And we have 1 position that we're asking for a vote on that we were not able to vote in the past on the 2 candidates. So we're still looking for people that are interested in serving on our council, and will most courteously and, you know, graciously accept applications and hopefully vote on a new member so we can have quorum in the future. Okay, so having said that, I know we did a lot today. It's 9:30. We have some members of the public that would like to speak, and then I'll ask for an adjournment, and then we'll do our business meeting. Okay. Carly, there's nobody here that's on the list, right? You already spoke? Or you spoke already?
No, I have something to say now.
Okay, so I'm gonna put the member that's here in our community, and then we'll go to the video conference. I'm gonna allow you 2 minutes.
Good, no, I don't mind. I just remembered that there's a guy named Scott Barry Kaufman. He's famous for the book Ungifted, and he talked about giftedness, and he mentioned his ENT issues, which reminded me of my experience in District 25 having ENT issues, ear, nose, and throat issues, having adenoids removed and tonsils removed, and how it affects your processing. So I was always in a general ed class, kindergarten to 3rd grade, and then in the 3rd grade, I was going to get a headset to hear the teacher, and my hearing miraculously improved. And in the 4th grade, I was tested into gifted and talented. My parents were knowledgeable about that system, and I filled out gifted and talented in the 5th grade. And then I went back into gifted and talented in the 6th grade. And then I went on to middle school, and what now I'm learning is STD classes in District 25 and PS 164, and at junior high school 168, now QSI. So I have a special connection to the district, as well as gifted learning and accelerated learning. And the experience of a student and a female of color, I remember now I'm the only Black person in my classes. Definitely the only Black female when I got into the 6th grade. Again, I want to request the aggregate data. If I could get that I want to see it by school. It's great. The presentation was phenomenal, of course, and I love the way it was discussed. I love the dialogue in this district, but I need to see the numbers at the schools because I saw that the lowest performing group was the Black students. And I also want to know what schools those Black students are at because most of the Black students in this district are at specific schools. And I want to compare 201 to 200. And I want to compare 201 to 165. And I want to compare 165 to 164. And I want to compare 164 to 154 because all of those schools are in like a 3-mile radius. Those are the communities that I grew up in, and those are the schools where the Black students are at. So I really want to see that 201 has a large population of Black students. And I remember they were on the Zoom advocating for their teachers, but they don't really understand how the system works. And where are they now advocating for their excess teachers, right? And also when you have a struggling school, you lose teachers because you've lost enrollment. So I want to make sure that parents and the community are educated about the specific schools in their neighborhood and how that impacts staffing, resources, programs, SP, gifted, all of that. And then I would ask, well, what do those schools have gifted? I know 165 does, right? But I want to know what middle schools do they feed into? So really, I want to know the experience of Black students in your district, not because I'm biased, but I want, usually a certain population brings down your district. So while the district is doing great, it's usually a huge gap, the same as in District 28, where we had the huge separate but not equal. And I really want to support parents in showing up, understanding, so that the district as a whole across and every school can be in that 60%, not certain schools in certain areas, and in other schools they're at like 20%, and we don't even know. So I'm asking for the aggregated data, email to me personally, so I don't have to go to the website. They don't go to the state website. That's so, I don't want to do that. I want to get what they gave the principals and teachers that's already set up for the school for ELA, math, science, and the nicest thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Venus. I'm going to join with Venus's request, but I'll ask, I'm sure Dr. D'Antona will provide that information and then we can get it to you also, this, right? Because it is a concern of the district, because it's, yeah, go ahead.
And I love this district. It's wonderful, and I come here to learn, not to attack.
Yeah, we know, Ms. Kitchen, and I don't like to have my back to you either, but you know, something that the community should know is that you know, of course, Dr. D'Antona will do that but every single one of your schools that you're requesting that information from will be able to give that to you because the expectation is that they've already, once the scores were embargoed, they should have communicated that with their community. But you know, there's a few things that I want to talk about that you know we've been very transparent in this district about, and you know we want to talk about and I appreciate you wanting to do outreach to parents in that community. But the other outreach that I've been talking a lot about with many of our principals is outreach to our Hispanic families as well, because as you heard Dr. D'Antona speak, our Hispanic students did not perform as well as other subgroups. And that has been a subgroup that we have targeted. They make up almost 30% of our district. And so we have done a tremendous amount of work with our principals of students in our schools and students that have high concentration of Hispanic students, such as PS 29, Ms. Leakey is here. And so she's the principal that I work very closely with. So we were actually just talking about the work that she does in engaging parents, because I think that is huge to the success of these students. So I appreciate you, and I would love to have the conversation with you about different types of parents as well, and how to connect with them.
Thank you, Superintendent. Excellent points, because it includes all groups in our district, right? So that's a good point to make. If there are no other comments here, I think we have somebody in video.
Waiting.
Who's that?
The American Debate League.
The American Debate League. You're here. I always see you in person. I don't see you today here. So you came on remotely. This is your time. You got 2 minutes.
Hello.
Step away. Is there anyone else on the list?
No, that was Oh, it came back. Hold on, Joe. American Debate League?
Yes, hello.
Hello, you're on.
Yes, oh, I'm sorry. Hi, it's Richard Connolly. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I just want to say that we're excited because we're back up with schools again. We have World Journalism Prep, which is back with us, IS 25, MS 37, and we're also happy to announce that we've received funding to work with additional 25 schools that are in Councilmember Palladino's district. So we could hopefully have a district tournament with the schools that she represents. We also would like to speak to the superintendent and the deputy super about reaching out to other 25 schools so we can have more involved as we're growing district by district. We're having a concept of district tournaments. We're doing that around the city. And as many of you probably know, we have these same schools prior to the pandemic, as well as we took World Journalism Prep to Harvard. Again, we'd like to speak to the superintendent and the CEC to find out about hosting a tournament there and having your schools qualify for the Queensborough Championships, as well as the city championships that have been historically sponsored by Senator John Liu. So I just want to say thank you for that opportunity. And I'll put my information in the chat, okay?
Sure.
Thank you, Richard. And
Thank
we
you
look
as
forward to
always.
See you next month.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We'll see you soon. Is there anyone else? That's a comment I like. Great specifics. Okay, so.
That's Melinda. She runs civics in our district.
So there's a question in the comment. I'm sorry, there was a question regarding Eden. So we, Eden, we took your vote and we are waiting. You know, we were stagnated because we also had Crystal Gonzalez. So it's not on our agenda to vote on your position or Crystal's position, but what I will do, Eden, is I will have Carly reach out to Crystal Gonzalez and ask if she's still interested in sitting on the CEC. And then if she is not, then we can put it on the agenda to vote on your coming on the council, right? Because we do have an open position, but as far as I know, it's Crystal. Hi, Crystal.
Okay, I didn't know.
So Crystal is here. So I'm assuming Crystal, I'm not sure Crystal, if you're still interested in serving on the council.
She can,
Because we did not have it on our agenda because we were stagnated, right? So
she said yes.
So you're still interested. So I mean, I can bring it on. I don't know if you want to bring it on, put it back to the vote tonight. It's up to you. We're going to have to actually put it on our agenda. So I think if you're both still interested in the position, then we will put it on for our November meeting and have an official tally of the votes, so we can hopefully bring on another member. Is that acceptable? Okay, so we're gonna put that on the agenda for next month and then ask for you, both Crystal and Eden, to be present. If you want to, I'll allow you, because it's been a while. If you want to give a statement before we take the vote, we'll allow you to do that for our next meeting. And thank you. And no disrespect to either one of you, I'm sorry. Okay? All right, so are there any other speakers on the list? Okay, so at this time, I know we've run a pretty lengthy meeting, and I know security's been coming up. I know, so they're giving us, because we only have a permit, I think, to a certain time. I'm gonna ask for an adjournment, if anyone, by motion.
Anne-Marie already did.
Anne-Marie made the motion. We do have to do our business meeting, which will be followed after like a 1-minute break, okay? Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next month, the first Wednesday of November for our next meeting. Thank you. We have consensus?
Yes.
Okay, so these things, anybody approved, the minutes are approved. Let's talk about what we need to do for the community, right? So, like I said, I had a resolution prepared regarding the high school admissions and only on the feedback that I've been getting, so maybe it's good that we circulate between ourselves what the feedback is. An interesting thing that Venus, brought up is, we're not gonna avoid what's happening with the city and the call for diversity and, making equity. But maybe we should ask for a more restricted group that maybe that lottery from the 15% should be now a lottery of the top 5%, because we really need to, I know some of the people in our community and some of the council members want to have a merit-based enrollment, but I don't think that's happening. I kind of agree with Venus. I don't think we have a lot of pushback from the city.
I'm gonna answer that question you had. I went to a meeting with a bunch of educators, during which time a retired teacher from Brown Science made the following statement. He said that the DOE has tried different combinations of ways just so they can get everybody into a certain schools. And the 15% is the magic number. They're not gonna change that.
So then we really need to prepare and send a message to the city, to the chancellor, and demand that the
Many districts already passed resolutions to.
they have. I know we've passed resolutions in the past. It doesn't mean that it's going to change things, but we need to make our statement. By us not making a statement, it doesn't show that we're.
If you look at the two districts who did slightly better than we did, District 2,
In District 26,
do they have any comment?
I get it, but we need to, as our District 25, we really need to sign off on a resolution and send it to the city, because people in the community and in other districts have been asking us, what's your position? So I think if anybody has, Carly, you can circulate the model resolution, we're missing page 2. And then if anybody has anything that we'd want to add on to it, then we could probably bring it up at our next meeting. Another thing that's coming up, and you guys may not know it, but I've gotten the heads up from other districts, there's this call by the DOE Fair Student Funding. What they're doing is they want to reallocate money so they can allow for the poverty-stricken areas to have more resources for their students, which is a wonderful idea, but it's not going to come from excess funds. What that means is they're going to take from districts or schools that don't have the need as other other schools have, and they're going to take away from the budget. There are certain models that have been out there during some public meetings that they've had that I was not made aware of. That there were 3 of them that happened today and 3 of them that happened yesterday, where they proposed these models to get feedback from the community. And what they really did was they said, look, take from the schools the bigger schools that don't have huge poverty levels, and take money from those schools and give it to the schools that need it. I get it, but it's going to severely affect our district because we have high performing students. We don't have a huge poverty level. We do have Title I schools. And if we have to take money out of our budget to give it to other schools, I don't think it's fair to the students, because it's not about, we're talking about students' needs, right? I get it that these poor schools need help, but I question, aren't there other sources of money that they're getting from other programs? So, what are they doing with that? So something that we need to start facing, and I'll try to circulate with you the models that I saw so you can understand the impact. So that's something we need to talk about as well.
Is this a public meeting?
It's public, yes.
So I heard that they have different, I'm not gonna mention details. They're gonna do certain things. I don't think it's fair that you take money from one district put in another. Fair student or equity should be each student gets, not certain district gets more than others because we're a public school, you want to promote equity, then each student should get a certain dollar amount. Not that if you live here, you get more, and you live there, you get less. But it's been, as far as I can remember, they always try to throw more money or more equipment into low performing schools. That doesn't really help the school. If you pay me twice as much, am I gonna be twice as good as a teacher? I mean, we pay her twice as much, maybe she had twice as much as a good superintendent. But as a classroom teacher, you gave me more money, I'm not any better. I don't think money is the issue. You want to solve educational issues, you cannot make politically correct decisions. You have to make educationally sound decisions. Money is not a savior for low performing schools.
And our district, we, and the superintendent can tell you, the schools, they really manage the budget very well. But if you take away money from their budget, you're going to have a negative impact on schools. We are definitely gonna be affected. Maybe we're fortunate that we live in an area which is doesn't have as much poverty as other areas, but I don't think it's fair to the students. It's not, that's not the way of going about it. So something we really need to start thinking of, maybe do a resolution, but I know that the DOE or Fair Student Funding Committee, whatever it is, they're engaging with the community, they want feedback, it's not decided yet, but maybe we need to speak in volumes on that. So something for us to think about for our next meeting as well. I also had the pleasure of attending a meeting with the superintendent and President's Council's president. Last week, we went to a safety meeting with the mayor and his group, which was very interesting. And I had the pleasure of speaking with the chancellor, and I said, look, and the mayor agreed, the issue regarding school safety is locking the doors, right? So I asked the chancellor, like, why can't we just lock the doors? We lock it at night. He said they're working on it, it's in the plans, but
Fire department rule.
it's, well, no, because the fire department can get into if they really want to, I think. The chancellor told me they need cameras, because once they lock the door and somebody comes during the day, they don't know what's on the other side. So they're working on it, but again, another big problem, budget, and it's not gonna happen. So, there was an incident that council member Palladino, I don't think it was in our district, but there was an intruder in one of the schools, and the principal avoided some type of problem. We had this problem 2 years ago in one of our schools. So, I think we need to lock the doors, and I think parents would want that, but it's something that we need to talk about also and maybe do a resolution on. Those are my thoughts. I'm not sure if anyone else has any other item of new business they want to talk about.
I do want to bring up that after schools, because I've been hearing a lot of not complaint, but like a statement from parents that how every day is going back to normal, but as you know, after COVID financially they're affected, but they have to go to work, but they need some kind of after school program in school, and they were looking for it. Just like a couple of months we had a meeting regarding about that, and also couple parents also asked the questions, is there any way that we could do something about it? So I think we should put into motion, something that we.
So that might, I don't know, Superintendent, if you can answer, isn't that related to funding and also with the money and the resources?
Isn't that 3 billion is coming, really?
So I think it's important to note that all of our middle schools have free after school, right? It's something that I've spoken to Michelle about for a long time. We just need to promote, and I know our schools have been promoting it more, just to make sure that those kids are really utilizing our free after school programs. Some of our schools have been able to, in our K-8, have been able to allocate more seats because of their relationship with after school programs. So I know that our principals and my office, we're really trying to work with DYCD. They're working with us to see if we can offer more seats. I don't know if we'll ever honestly get to a space where there's completely free after school for all. I know that, we do have lotteries. I have instructed all of my principals for families who are interested in selecting after school programs to work with their families to see if they can select some paid after school programs. And then to really make sure that those after school programs are providing the level of expectations and that are required by law. Like schools, they can, usually if a school is going to engage with the community around an after school program, there are certain guidelines that need to be followed, because I've looked at some of the contracts from these after school programs and there's no way we can sign them. So they've already been refused. They ask for us to pay for facilities and for us to pay for staffing, and we just can't do that. The other realistic thing is when PS 120 lost their original after school program, they ran an after school program and it cost over $200,000. So it is a very expensive endeavor. So I will say, what I think is really important is that those families are speaking to their principals and they're working with their school's SLTs. I know, for example, like 169 has been able to get additional support from their CBOs. So, but I think we do need to be honest. We're never going to get free after school for all kids, even though I would love to have that,
I think that even if there is a after school program that's run by a private company inside a school, a principal is hesitant to let the parents know about it. And even if a parent asks the principal whether there is a after school program in the school, they shy away from answering that question because the principal doesn't want to seem like they're endorsing for the business, right?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that we ask those after school programs to do, and we recommend that a lot of our after school organizations do this, like Kappa. They promote their schools, they stand outside, they hand out flyers, they let people know. So we do say that to after school programs. There are very strict conflict of interest laws where if we recommend a particular program, another program could say that that's a conflict. We're very clear with many of our after school programs, like there's, as long as you're following the guidelines of letting people know where you are, we support that, but we can't say, here's a list of after school programs that we recommend. We do know that some after school programs are picking up kids with buses. We had concerns with the safety of students on buses and we were not able to control them. So we don't necessarily recommend after school programs, but it is definitely something that we need to continue to talk about and work towards, because we do need more seats to support our families. I agree.
So maybe we can invite DYS and see two or three, one of our next meeting, one of the two meetings in the future, so we can bring the discussion to the community and everyone can understand better. Maybe, I don't know if we can get it. Do we have anything on for next month?
I don't know not yet.
So maybe.
I was gonna have, also, if you guys agree, Rick come and talk about, level service and the services that we provide in district.
Okay.
But, yeah.
So that would be next month?
Richard Braun. He put a PowerPoint together to just let our families know what are the different offerings that we have in terms of transitional bilingual education, dual language, not just ESL.
So that's one good item, but we could probably fit, I know we make these meetings very late, but maybe can you reach out, Carly, to the representative for the after school programs and maybe bring it on for our next agenda?
Okay.
All right. Any other item of new business? All right, so these are things we need to discuss and be prepared for. I'm going to find out from Eloise regarding the quorum question, because That's a problem in this district. We don't have quorum, and the bylaws provide that it's the majority of the whole number of the members of the council. So if we're only a council of 8 members, then we should have a majority. I mean, you would think it's 5, not 6, because if the borough president is not putting anybody in those positions, then he's holding us hostage. So I'll find out about that. We need to, I know Eden and Crystal are still interested in the position, so I don't know how that's gonna work out, but if we have any other applications, maybe you should. Did we receive anything?
No, not yet.
So maybe we should send a notice out to the community before our next meeting. Because if we have Crystal, Eden, and somebody else, maybe we can figure that out. Okay, so if there's any other item, our next meeting is scheduled for November 2nd, Wednesday. I encourage council members that circulate like emails within each other so we can try to tweak these resolutions and vote on them and get them out. Okay? Any motions to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Motion and seconded.
Everyone have a good evening.